My name's Betty Milliman. I'm here as a regular interested citizen. I'll be introducing this gentleman in just a second. I've looked at his credentials, and I think the best way to describe him is something similar to Elon Musk's, forgive me, assistant, Big Balls. It was his name. Anyway, he's a brilliant man. He apparently has some good information to share with us. Personally, I'm tired of listening to different sides of the story about our elections, and there seems to be a lot of emotion from both sides on what's going on with them. I don't like the fact that it gives us doubt in our minds. So anyway, where'd he go? There.
I'm right here.
I didn't expect to be up here a long time.
Okay.
We'll scare him out. Anyway, this is Dr. Frank, and he's come a long ways to give us some very important information, and he'll tell you better about how smart he is. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Don't forget to turn that off. Did you all get one of these when you came in? On the back side, they've got a couple of songs down there, and they asked me to lead you in a song, the My Country 'Tis of Thee. But if you'll notice the lyrics, it's a prayer. So they asked me to open in prayer and a pledge, but I don't want us to pray twice. We'll just pray once, and we'll sing our prayer. How about that? So how about if we stand and say the pledge, and then we'll sing My Country 'Tis of Thee, which is a prayer. And that'll be our prayer for tonight. How about that? Is that a deal? All right, so let's, if we have a veteran around who might start us out here. Would you lead us, sir, in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Keep standing. When I was a kid, we used to say that in elementary school, and the next thing we did was, My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring, let music swell the breeze, and ring from all the trees, sweet freedom song. Let mortal tongues awake, let all that breathe partake, let rocks that their silence break, the sound prolong. Here's the prayer part. Our Father's God, to thee, author of liberty, to thee we sing. Lord, may our land be bright with freedom's holy light. Protect us by thy might, great God our King. Amen. Thank you for singing. That was awesome. Y'all have a seat, please. Thank you. Thanks for asking me to do that. I love doing that. I had to turn the mic off so I could really belt it out, because I like to let her rip. Where did you serve, sir? Vietnam. Thank you for that. You serve with a lot of South Koreans at your side? No. Because I just came from South Korea, and they fought hard alongside us. Yeah, you've heard it. But thank you for your service. All right. Good to be with you. By the way, this beautiful image that I put up there while we were singing about liberty is a picture of Lady Liberty. This is in the dome of the Wisconsin Capitol building. It's a massive, massive mosaic. It has 200,000 pieces of glass in it. It's a picture of Lady Liberty, and she's, with one hand, she's pointing towards heaven, because that's the inspiration and the source of our liberty comes from heaven. But what is she doing with the other hand? She's protecting the ballot box. That's how we protect our liberty. And she needs to. And that's where we've been dropping the ball. And I have a pastor friend. He says he preaches to himself and he lets other people listen. And so if it sounds like I'm coming on strong at you, I'm coming on strong at me too, because I'm preaching to myself. We have dropped the ball with our elections. We have given our elections away to other people. Someone else, somewhere else in the world, is controlling our elections. We're no longer controlling our elections locally. My objective today is to show you what's wrong with our elections, show you what's wrong with Baker County elections, and I'm not blaming your clerk. The problem, was it Stephanie is her name? So I'm not blaming Stephanie. She's captive to a state system that's illegal, and we proved it in court just this year. And I've been telling you for years you had too many people in your voter rolls. In fact, a year ago I said you had about 800,000 too many in your voter rolls. And what just happened? In the Judicial Watch lawsuit, they proved, and Tobias Reed has been required to remove 800,000 people from your voter rolls. What an amazing coincidence that what I told you you had to do was proven in court to be true. Everything I show you is my own personal work, my own personal numbers that I will show you how I got them, where I got them. So I'm not speculating in everything. Everything I show you is fact. I'm a scientist. I'm a PhD scientist. I have 60 scientific peer-reviewed publications. In fact, in 1990, I made a major scientific discovery. It made me world famous. I got on the cover of Nature and Science, and I got nominated for a Nobel Prize in Chemistry. I'm a real scientist. I really love numbers. I love doing analysis of massive amounts of numbers, which is what elections are. That's how I got into this mess. So I'm delighted to be with you. I spent today, I've met with two people. One of your commissioners, Christina. Boy, I like her. She's got her act together. And I showed her what I'm going to show you, and she was blown away. When I show people their own data, I have a motto. It's called Follow the Data with Dr. Frank. I don't have to make an argument to you. I just have to show you your own situation. It's like if you go to the doctor, he doesn't have to argue that he has cancer. He just shows you the MRI, and there's the picture, right? Okay, it's like you don't have to argue it. I don't need to argue that your elections are horrible. I'm going to show you that your elections are horrible in your own county. And over here on the dry side of the Cascades, what I usually hear from people is they say, oh, Dr. Frank, we love our clerk. We love our commissioners. We're a good community. We got good, wholesome agriculture, hardworking people here. We don't have a problem here. Yeah, you do. And the reason you have a problem is not because you have great people. The reason you have a problem is because you're not in charge of your election. I want to put you back in charge of your elections. And that is what the brochure that you got, hopefully it says 7 steps for taking back your elections. We have a local team we've built here, we put together in Baker, and I want you to help that team. I want you to engage and join their effort. And I was talking with Christine today. Christina. Today, and she said, boy, when I described to her what I'm going to ask you to do, she was like, if you could do that, we got this. So do what I tell you, and we'll be able to take back our elections. So anyway, I'm glad to be there. I've been all over your state, been coming here for since mid-2021, all over the place, but mostly on this side of the Cascades. And I was there about a year and a half ago, and I was visiting a sheriff up in Clatsop. I always like to visit the sheriffs, and by the way, I've met with your sheriff. I like him. He's a good guy, good sheriff here in your county. And I was meeting with that sheriff, showing him the data for his county. He says, how come you, and at that point I had no check marks over here. And he said, how come you haven't gone over to the dry side, the east side of the Cascades? And I said, well, nobody ever invited me. Everybody always invited me over here, so this is where I've been going. So he says, you need to go there. So he started calling the sheriffs over here, and Teresa, who's my scheduler, thank you very much, Teresa, and Stephen, who lives outside of Salem on a beautiful 42-acre piece of property there and trees. He drives me around and provides me security. And those two drove me around, and we did some prospecting, and we met with sheriffs and did some talking. So this is about my third or fourth time on this side of the Cascades. Is that about right, Teresa? So thank you guys for doing that. And now your side's waking up, because you just didn't realize how bad it was. So I had to come over and show you it's bad and then show you what to do. So I'm not just going to show you it's bad and leave you hanging. I'm going to say, here's the problem, here's the solution. And I need to show you the problem enough so that you'll understand what the solution is and why I'm telling you what to do. Got it? So I'm happy to do that with you. I just came back from, and I need to talk a little bit about this with you because I need to change your worldview just a little bit. So I just came back from South Korea. So I spent 2 weeks in South Korea watching there as an official observer. I was invited by the former prime minister of South Korea to observe their elections. And the reason that they were so worried is because they're losing their country. Let me just jump to that. I think this is worth spending a minute or two on. Forgive me, you need to see this. So what happened was in March, the former prime minister of South Korea spoke at CPAC, and he said, America, we need your help. We're losing our country. We're losing our country because of corrupt elections. And Mike Lindell and he met afterwards together, and then Mike called me on the phone and said, I want you to join their team. Would you please consider joining their team? So I did a Zoom call with their team. We're protecting the identities of the younger people, but the translator, her name's Jennifer, and then Chu Hyun, he's head of the election fraud team. Think of South Korea as the size of Indiana, divided into counties, and those are their provinces. And they have 50 million people that live there. So they're pretty densely packed. So anyway, I met with them, and I told them about my skills and what I could offer, and I said, you want me to come? And they said, yes, 1,000% yes, please come. And I said, well, when do you need me? And they said, tomorrow. So I knew nothing about South Korea except that my father-in-law and my stepfather both served in the Korean War. And so I felt like, well, I've got a family investment here, so I'm going to go help. I didn't know anything. So the next day, as I'm getting on the airplane, I noticed that all over X, the South Koreans love using Twitter. They love using X. They're all on that. They don't use much Facebook. This commercial appeared.
And if Trump doesn't win, this will be the last real election in America.
Those are the most severe.
Sorry, I'm trying to make sure this. Are you guys not getting this? Or here, hang on. I know what happened. The speaker went timed out. Let me put that on. Sorry about that, guys. Here we go. It went to sleep because we set it up so long ago. There we go. All right. Not too old yet. I can still do that. Okay. Let's see here. There we have it. Now you should have audio. Yes. Okay, so let me start that.
Tax on our election.
All right, so this appeared on X the next day.
And if Trump doesn't win, this will be the last real election in America.
Those are the most.
I just want to pause there for a second. That's Elon Musk, the richest guy in the world, more computer access than just about anybody, saying if Trump didn't win in 2024, it would be the last election we'd ever have, the last real election. Just think about that for a minute. I'm going to go on here.
Severe attacks on our election system.
So,
by your country.
we cut it short, just to save time. So, this commercial is advertising the fact that they formed a team, a joint team with America and South Korea to investigate elections. They made a big deal out about me coming there. I didn't even know. And they finished the commercial with this, with me. Here we go. I want you to see, here we go.
The Uniparty, Deep State, Globalists, and the CCP. This is what they want.
Notice the United States and the Republic of Korea. The United States and the Republic of Korea. We're a joint team now.
I am 100% sure that we will be able to expose the fraud.
Okay. Who was that? That's me. But they hid my identity. They wanted me to come. They were announcing this big deal, but they didn't want anybody to know it was me coming, and they didn't want the government to know because they were afraid that it wouldn't let me in. Now, wait a minute. This is South Korea. This is the Republic of Korea. It's a free republic. They're one of our allies. They're supposed to be a beacon of liberty in the East. So wait a minute, what's going on here? That should have been my first clue. So I arrived at the airport. I arrived with one other person. His name is Morse Tan. And the first thing that happened is the translator said, "We apologize that there aren't 1,000 people to greet you at the airport." She said, but she gave me flowers. I mean, they don't even give me flowers in America. Again, okay, so it's like, welcome to South Korea. They made a big deal about my arrival, but they wanted to first get me through. And I was there with Morse Tan, who's a former ambassador at large that Trump appointed in 2019. He was one of 3 ambassadors that could go anywhere in the world and speak on behalf of America. So he was a well-respected former chairman of the political science department at Liberty University, a great guy. So he and I spent a lot of time together. But he's important to the story because once he was in the country of South Korea passed a travel ban on him. He can't leave the country, and he's been stuck there now. He can't leave the country. In other words, the government won't let him leave. Just think about that. See where this is going? So anyway, they made a big deal about me being there. I forgot to say one thing. They had a whole bunch of podcasters there interviewing me when I arrived. And the first question one of the podcasters asked me is, he says, "Dr. Frank, when is America going to come to rescue us?" What? I just got on a plane and flew to South Korea. I didn't know any of this was happening, and I don't think most people in America even know what just happened in Korea. It just became communist. And nobody knows this, okay? It's a big deal. All right, so anyway, that was what happened. So I was warmly welcomed. I went and I met the election integrity team. They have all this advertising about the fact that we're working together. The former prime minister and his wife, amazing Christian people. I love these people. They were my hosts, and I met the team. And during the election period, they have 2 days of early voting, Friday, Saturday, and then the election day voting on Wednesday. So during that period of time, you're not allowed to have public events if you're a candidate. So Morris and I both held press conferences, and we presented the work that we had found in the early voting. We had found tons of cheating in the early voting, and I was featured on their popular television program. And the first question the host asked me was, "Dr. Frank, when is the U.S. going to send the military to save us?" I had no idea that these were the questions that I was going to get. So in between, while we were waiting for Wednesday to come out, I was analyzing the early voting data, and then they were taking me around the country to the Ministry of Information, the National Election Commission, the NEC they call it. And then they took me to this place called AWEB, which is the Association of World Election Bodies. I'd never heard of it before. But as I travel around, I always take selfies of myself. And then I post them on social media so people know where I'm at, what I'm doing. I'm the Johnny Appleseed Election Integrity. I'm traveling around the country. So I posted that. Little did I realize I committed a faux pas, a serious faux pas. It's sort of like if I said the N-word here in public, that would not be popular. You would say, no, you're not allowed to do that, right? That's not popular. Well, you're not allowed to say AWEB in South Korea. It's like a moment of shame. It's a point of shame for the people there because it's the World Election Fraud Cartel headquarters. It's where the CCP, where Chinese people export election fraud all around the world. Right here, and it's like a thing of shame for them. So when I posted this on social media, I didn't realize what I had done. The very next day, their conservative magazine featured me on the cover of their magazine. It's like, but it's like the conservative magazine in America. It's the only one left that they have. But it's not just Dr. Frank's here investigating election fraud in South Korea. He's here. They put AWEB right on the cover. So in other words, suddenly now everybody in the state knows I'm here, and I'm here not just to look at your election, but guess what? We're investigating, right? The Koreans are in trouble. They know it. They know they need America to come to the rescue, like we did in 1950 to 53 for the Korean War. And they're saying, we need America. So all I did was show up in a bow tie, okay? I haven't done anything that anybody knows about except show up. but I represent to them America coming to the rescue. I'm the Calvary over the mountain. And so they have a really popular culture there called K-pop. And suddenly people are making AI images of me. I'm suddenly like, I'm a pop star. And all I did was just show up, okay? It was crazy. But we're like the Four Musketeers, you know, Dr. Frank and Juan Kyo-an, former prime minister, and Morris Tan and Chu Hyun. You know, we're the Four Musketeers. We're going to save the country. We're going to protect this election, which is coming up on Wednesday, the National Election Day. So that's what it's all about. But after the AWeB stuff came to mind, I remembered a video. From Mr. Lindell from 2021. He published this in 2021 in February, and you may remember this. Do you remember this movie, Absolute Proof, when he put that out? Where's all that communication coming from? 2 places. China, Huawei. South Korea, AWeB. So he was telling us the data that President Trump gathered during the 2020 election, which is what this is from, was showing, guess where the election fraud headquarters is? Right there in South Korea. And it's been right in front of our face all along. And by the way, where are all those communications going? Right into Oregon, right into California, right into all over our country. So this matters to you because your elections are totally hacked. Did you know your elections are totally hackable? Your own Secretary of State has admitted this. I have it in writing. I can show you on the screen. I testified in that lawsuit in Washington County, just south of Multnomah County. Your Secretary of State admitted in writing that your machines can be connected to wirelessly and they can be hacked if you have the passwords, which I do. How did I get all the passwords? Because the county clerk of Washington County accidentally gave a complete backup to one of the citizens there. And that's another whole story, which has led to that lawsuit. But anyways, I have all the passwords for all your machines in your state. I can log into them remotely. Even if they're turned off, you think they're turned off. If they're plugged in, the motherboard's hot, and I can log in. So your elections are completely vulnerable. But anyway, that was an interesting thing that happened. And just to give you an idea, the president gave a speech a couple weeks ago about election vulnerability, but he's preparing you for what's about to happen. I think November is going to be a momentous month in the life of our country. And last year, Castro announced that in October before the 2020 election, the month before the 2020 election, the FBI seized 1 million fake driver's licenses and 1 million fake ballots corresponding to the driver's license. They seized them outside of Detroit. And that's just one of several I know about around the country. In other words, China is printing fake IDs, fake ballots, and they're shipping them over from where? AWeB. Into America, and they're using those to stuff in our elections to control our elections in America. That's not hypothesis. I've seen that evidence with my own eyes, and the FBI seized it, and that's what Trump is talking about it, because the whole idea is our elections are not controlled locally anymore. They're controlled remotely by all sorts of cheating mechanisms. I mean, I don't want to spend too much more time on Korea, but I just want you to understand why this is important. This is super important that you understand this. This affects you right now in a very significant way. So what happens is the people in South Korea, they live like this. They live like in groups of buildings, 30-story buildings. They call them vertical villages. There might be like 10,000 people that live in this village and 10,000 live in that village. And they all come down out of their village. They got a park and a playground and a community center and pools and public baths and things like that. But they live in these vertical villages. So when they vote, they come down out of their building and they vote in the little community center. That's important that you know. Well, on election day, Juan Kyo-an and I were driving around in our limousine. We had a little entourage of 3 limousines. We were observing the elections and, collecting data and whatnot. And we noticed on X that a small precinct ran out of ballots. And they announced it on X, and they called the NEC, the National Election Commission, and said, hey, we're out of ballots. We need more ballots. The NEC said, no, we already gave you enough. Just give us what you got, and that's all you're going to get. So Juan Kyo-an and I drove over to the precinct, and there's this huge line of people that want to vote, and there's no ballots. And so I got out a bullhorn, stood in front of them, and said, you shouldn't give them any of your ballots until they give you all the ballots you need so everybody can vote. And when and this was live, because you should see, everybody's got their camera up. Everybody's got a camera, they're all standing with their video. Suddenly, 10,000 people come down out of the building and surround the building. And basically, we told the NEC, we're not going to give you any of our ballots until you give us all the ballots. And by the way, Dr. Frank suggests that there's all this cheating going on in the early voting. We want to see these ballots with our own eyes before we give them to you. Within hours, 20 other precincts had 10,000 people coming down out of the buildings because they also ran out of ballots. How did that happen? There was so much cheating in the early voting that they ran out of ballots for the regular election day voting. That's what was happening. So after 2 days of this, we had 120 precincts around the country with about 10,000 people apiece. So we were about 1 million people protesting. And here's what then happened. This is so amazing. Then Trump even showed up. But Juan Kyoan and I were, leading on, and we were saying, we go together and we want to redo the election because this one's fraudulent. And we were leading big chants. That's what it kind of felt like. But then the next morning, 400 police showed up. They made a V, and they forced their way through the crowd, and they took the 2 barrels of ballots out of that, and they took them down to the central counting facility. It's like a stadium. And suddenly they had 4 barrels of ballots. They only picked up 2 barrels, and they delivered 4, which is kind of interesting since they were missing about half the ballots they needed to vote. Isn't that interesting? So anyway, that's an interesting coincidence. But anyway, so what happened is what you have now. You have 10,000 people who are really mad because they didn't get a chance to vote, and the police came and pushed them out of the way. Now, that would be hard to do in Oregon. If 10,000 of you surrounded a building, the police wouldn't be able to come push you out of the way. Why? Because you'd all have your guns. That's what the whole point of the Second Amendment is. The government can't impose themselves on us. We protect ourselves against the government. That's what the Second Amendment is for. Well, the Korean people are completely disarmed. Nobody has a weapon. There's one weapon in sight anywhere. So, in fact, their current president, who's a total communist, disarmed all of the South Korean troops on the 38th parallel, which is the demilitarized zone. So they're basically inviting in an invasion from North Korea. It's amazing that this is happening. That was to 2025. So you can see the way they pushed Juan Kyoan. So now you've got 10,000 angry people. What do? They join another one. And the police went in there and took, so those 20,000 joined those. And before you knew it, about 4 or 5 days after the election, we have 1 million people protesting in the country at 3 major sites. And I was at one of them at Pyeongtaek with speaking to about 100,000 people. It's amazing. These people are mad and welcome because they realized their election's being stolen from them. Their election was stolen from them last year in 2025. It's how they have a population of 9 out of 10 people are conservative, pro-American, anti-communist. But they elected a communist president, and they all know it wasn't real, that it was a cheated election. And so that's why they invited me this time. They're desperate. We're in trouble, Dr. Frank. If they win this election, we know we're in trouble because this election was on what they call their National Assembly, which is like our Congress. And they now have a majority, a supermajority in their National Congress, and the first thing they're doing is changing their constitution. And they're changing it from being a free republic into a socialist republic modeled after the USSR. That's happening right now in South Korea. Have you heard about that before? If some of you did, but if you didn't hear about it, you have to ask yourself, why isn't the media covering it? Because they're doing it here. Exactly. The media will not cover the communist takeover. At that press conference I gave, a man came up to me and handed me this book. It's called The Quiet Coup. I think I have a slide of this. It's called The Quiet Coup. He's the former director of the National Intelligence Service. How a color revolution in Seoul. How a free republic was engineered toward communist capture. And this is an English preprint of his book, which is already published in Korean. It's supposed to come out on Amazon this month. And so I was reading it in English. It's kind of clumsy English. I think you probably used AI to translate it. But basically, as you read it, it describes everything that's happening in America right now. We are being engineered for a communist takeover in our country. And you're here in Oregon. I don't have to convince you. Okay? When I'm in Alabama, I have to convince them. but I have, and I have teams in Alabama analogous to the teams I have here. In fact, I was on the phone with them today. We're kicking butt over there too. I want you to join in with us. And how was it engineered? Well, basically what happened is 30 years ago, they started infiltrating our education, our legal system, our elections, our entertainment, media. They're infiltrating every part of our culture. And it's like a bunch of small tumors got started 30 years ago. And today we've got a bunch of big tumors now. I mean, just look, you even want to send your kids to the universities today? Why would you want to do that? They come home different people. That's like indoctrination centers. Or our legal system is just, I testified in this lawsuit in Washington County. What a joke that was. So our legal system is totally infiltrated, totally corrupt. And what's interesting is everything that has just been happening the last 3 years in Korea is happening right now in America. They even impeached their president, just like we just impeached Trump in 2018. So 2 years from now, we'll be dead, just like 2 years like they were dead in South Korea now. If we don't act now, it's just going to be worse. So I think what's going to happen in November is the president's going to end up declaring martial law after the election, just like they had to do over there. Now, what's so fun about South Korea is those people know how to demonstrate, but they're kind of like already set up for it, right? They're in these groups. All they have to do is come out of the building. You got 10,000 people. But it's pretty cool to be in front of that big of a group. This is what it looked like at Seoul Coliseum when I was there, 100,000 people. And did you ever see that on the news? They're not covering it. They're deliberately not covering it. They don't want you to know that this just happened in Seoul. And I'm right there with my bullhorn. It was crazy to be me. I thought I was going to have to convince them that there was election fraud using all my fancy math. But the government just handed it to us. They didn't give them enough ballots, and there was so much cheating that they just basically told everybody, sorry, that's it. We're going to just count the ballots. So it was handed to us on a silver platter. I didn't have to convince anybody. So it was instant movement. It was awesome. The head of the NEC had to resign in shame. That was a big deal. And in the federal Congress now, we're going to announce an investigation into this. This is awesome. 200,000. This is 200,000 Christian college students marching in Seoul. And you notice what are they doing? They're carrying American flags and South Korean flags. They love America, and they love Americans. I was so warmly welcomed there, but they know they're in trouble. They can't elect themselves out of this mess. They're in trouble. They need America to intervene because they're losing their country right in front of everybody's eyes. And it's through infiltration. Same as here. It's a color revolution. They've had a coup. So that same stuff is happening here. So I could go on and on for hours, but you need to realize that this fight that we're fighting for election integrity is not just Baker County. It's not just Oregon. It's not the United States. It's the whole world. We are fighting for liberty in the whole world. And it's the best way to sum it up, I think, by the way, the one thing I didn't say, if you want to, I'm not a foreign correspondent, but every day I was on Lindell TV giving updates, what was going on. It was amazing. So if you want to see those, they're on my YouTube channel, or you can go onto Lindell TV and see them. It was weird to be a foreign correspondent. That's not my normal thing. But I did an interview on Bannon when I got back as well to tell everybody what was going on. But I'm just going to use this to kind of close my discussion of Korea. This is a letter. I was in the limousine. We had 3 limousines. In the center one, John is one of the most popular podcasters. When he goes live, 1 million people are watching in Korea. He's very popular. He's a fine Christian man. And he says, Dr. Frank, he says, I want to write a letter to America. I said, okay. So I got my pad and I start to write it. And as soon as he started talking, I said, stop right there. And I took out my phone and I recorded it. And I want you to hear 3 minutes of his letter to America, and then we'll move on to elections. Here, this will blow your mind.
I have a letter to America. Dear America, I'm a husband, father of 3. Well, 140 years ago, you came to our land and you taught us the Bible. So now I'm saved. Thank you. Thank you, America. In 1950 to 1953, you came to our land again. You fought for us. You protected us. Almost 36,000 American soldiers died, and more than 100,000 American soldiers got injured. You came to our land to protect us. You bled and died for us. You bled and died instead of us. Thank you. So I'm alive. And still, you're in our land. You're still protecting us. Thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't thank you enough. My brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers in America, in Christ, thank you and love you. From now, we're not gonna just ask for help. We wanna fight for you now. America is the strongest country.
What happened? Did my speaker shut off? No? Huh. We'll try again. Sorry about that. What's going on here? Sorry, folks. We got hacked. My computer crashed somehow. Here we go. Maybe Windows is doing an update. Sorry. Here we go. Let's see if it goes. Yeah, right. Huh. Okay, that's good. Huh. Sorry. And turn it off and on again. That seems to be the universal fix. That's a poignant moment, too. Try that. Whoops. Next time. 65 this month. Oh, that's a good sign. Okay. Yeah, it's not finding my... Okay, it's not finding it for some reason. My Bluetooth got messed up. So it's on my computer side. I don't know what's set up. All right, so let me just see if I can play it loud enough, and you just have to listen quietly. So turn it full up. You heard that, okay. Let's resume that, and here we go.
In Christ, thank you and love you. From now, we're not gonna just ask for help. We wanna fight for you now. America is the strongest country, but America is fighting a lonely fight. You have your family, brothers, and sisters here. From now on, we want to fight for you. America has to be stronger and wealthier. We want to make America stronger and wealthier and greater to protect people, protect the world, to protect freedom of faith. And thank you. So please help. It could be your words, military, finance. Give me some weapons so we can fight for you. Fight for freedom. Fight for freedom of our faith. Thank you. Love you, America.
So they're not alone. In Korea, they realize that America is the line. If we fall, the world falls. We're the beacon of freedom. We're the line between communism and liberty. And he knows, and they know, and I thought that so clearly expresses that they see that we are fighting a fight. So the fight that I'm asking you to join us in is not merely for Oregon elections. We're fighting for John and his 3 beautiful children in South Korea. We're fighting for liberty worldwide. This is a bigger thing, and Trump understands that, which is why he's addressing election integrity. And AWEB they know that there's fraud, and they want to get rid of AWEB. It was one last thing about, and then I'll get out of here, get over to the election stuff here in America. There were 3 major groups of people protesting. There were the older people who remember communism, and they remember it because the 38th parallel, where the demilitarized zone is between North and South Korea, everybody north of that who was a Christian was slaughtered, was executed by the government. It's treasonous to be a Christian in North Korea. If you become a Christian, they'll execute you. And the churches are all closed. So the South Koreans realize that if they lose their country to communism, it's an existential threat. So one of the biggest groups that are protesting are the churches, and the other are the people who remember, the older people. And then, so surprisingly, I showed you 200,000 young people. They also realize their future is at risk. The young people in America don't understand that their future is at risk, and so they're completely disengaged from this. But the young people there, they understand. They see they're about to lose their country. They're not going to have a country they can raise their kids in liberty, and it's an amazing situation. So those are the three groups that were it's just incredible. That's outside the Seoul Coliseum. I spoke to about 100,000 people. Just incredible. So that was an eye-opener for me, but it also elevates our whole discussion. We're not just talking about us. We're talking about the whole country. All right. So what did Trump talk about in his speech 2 weeks ago? He started out by saying America is doing great because he was about to bash us pretty good in elections, and he doesn't want you to think it's all bad. America's doing great, and he kind of gave his talking points. And then he started talking about elections, and I love this phrase: no trust, no greatness. And what did you say? You said at the beginning, you said, you don't know, you don't trust.
It's scary not to trust that your vote counts.
It's scary. You've lost trust. Yeah. Well, you should, because it's not trustworthy, and I'm going to show you it's not worthy. Okay, so. But if we can't trust our elections, how can we have a country? We can't have a free country. And that is the situation. We are teetering right on that edge right now as a country. Imagine if Kamala were president. Okay? That almost happened. Okay? We are right hanging on that edge. That's a scary thing. So then he announced the declassification release of a bunch of information, like the ballot information I showed you that Kash Patel did. And then most of what I saw was I'd already known or already heard, but he did announce something new. He pointed out that the government itself is infiltrated, that information that should have made it to the White House is being filtered out. So the leaders in our country don't even know what's really happening around the world. And he accused Obama of treason in a press conference. That's a serious thing. So we're in a very interesting time in history right now. And if you're expecting Trump to fix it, you shouldn't. That's a bad expectation. He can lead with the bully pulpit. He can talk about the executive orders, but there's limited power. The solution is not top down. The solution is bottom up. The solution is us. We are the solution, and that's why I'm here. And he raised 5 concerns about our elections. He said there's compromised election data, and he specifically mentioned that China had all of our election data and they were using it to cheat our elections. He specifically mentioned that there's deep state suppression and cover-up. I just mentioned that one. That was new to me. I hadn't heard that evidence go public before. I knew some of it, but I hadn't heard it go public before. And then there's large-scale manufacture of fraudulent ballots. The president's confirming what we're showing. There are all these cyber vulnerabilities, I already mentioned that to you, in Oregon, and non-citizens in the rolls, and you have that problem too. So basically, he's preparing you. It's called the Overton window, what you're allowed to discuss in public. He's bringing that into the public discussion so that everybody can discuss election fraud. Because guess what's going to happen in the midterm? There's going to be a lot of fraud, and he's going to have to intervene, and he's going to declare a state of emergency, and all that stuff's going to happen. Can you imagine what's going to happen in our country when that happens? It's a big deal. So that's where I think we are headed as a country, unless we get our act together before then, and I think that might be just a little unrealistic. All right. Now, I've been working in your state for several years, and we arranged for a couple of lawsuits here. One of the things we had Judicial Watch sue your state, and the reason we did that is because they proved in court that your voter rolls are out of compliance with federal law. I mean, massively out of compliance with federal law, and the judge ordered this that Tobias Read had to remove 800,000 people from your rolls, which he didn't do. And he used the dirty voter rolls for your primary. So any candidate who lost could have standing and could say, illegal voter rolls were used to run my election. I have standing. Think about that mess that could create. So that was a big deal. Another thing is the Department of Justice sued you, and I had something to do with both these lawsuits because it's part of our strategy. Here's the basic nut of my strategy with you guys. Your voter rolls are illegal. Your election systems are illegal. Why are you using them? You don't have to listen to me tell you they're illegal. We proved it in court, in your own state courts, that they're illegal. So why are you using them? Third of all, you're wasting huge amounts of money. About a third of the people in your voter rolls don't belong there, and you're mailing ballots to all of them. So not only are you wasting all that money, but you're exposing yourself to potential election fraud by littering the pavement with ballots, essentially. Anybody can scrape them up and turn them in. Why are you doing that? The only thing you're missing in Oregon, and I mean this in a loving way, is you guys are all despaired. You're like all beaten down by the government. We got to wake you up and get you organized and get you to stand together. And when I was talking to Christina today, I was describing the strategy. She's like, this is perfect. She says, this is the strategy that will work. All we need is we just need the counties to stand together. So let's say that Baker County gets your juices flowing and you say, okay, that's it. We're going to take back local control of our elections. We're not going to use the illegal voter rolls from the state. We're not going to use the illegal election systems of the state. We're going to run our own elections. Let's say Baker County did that. What would happen next? The state government would come down on you like a load of bricks. But if you had 10 counties that all did it at the same time, what would they do then? What could they do then? That's what we're doing. And Baker County, you are one of my favorite picks. You guys are perfect for this strategy because you're small, you're conservative, your county officials know you. You only lack the knowledge, the local knowledge you need to go to your county commissioners, which I just explained to Christina, but we need you to bring it to her. Dr. Frank, the smart guy, can come in and he can talk about all the statistics and nothing will happen. But if all of you get in a line at the county commission meeting week after week and start reading cases of fraud into the public record, watch how fast things happen. That's what we're doing in Oregon right now, up in Washington County. We've been doing that for months. And of all the counties, Multnomah is probably the most left-leaning. Multnomah, or Portland is. But the next one would be Washington County. And guess what? We've been reading cases of fraud in there for months. And finally, the commissioners called me up and said, okay, what do we need to do? And I went up and met with them. So this strategy will work, but I need you to be engaged. That's what I'm here. So I need to teach you what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what we're going to do next. That makes sense? And you're not just fixing Oregon. Once we've got Oregon fixed, the rest of the country is going to go, well, if they can do it in Oregon, how come we can't do it here? Because you guys are one of the worst in the whole country. I'm sorry. It's a bad situation. Okay. All right. So let me show you what I mean by bad. Okay. I haven't even really introduced myself, but you know me well enough by now. I said enough. Okay. Oregon. By the way, these graphs are available online. You can go to my YouTube channel and download them and take pictures and show your friends and everything. Let me just show you the situation. So this is for the whole state of Oregon. This is from 1960 up to present. And this blue curve on top is how many people in your state are 18 and older. So back in 1960, it had about 1.25 million people who were 18 and older. And now it looks like you got about 3 million people that are 18 or older. Make sense? Follow me? Your population was growing steady. Now it's been flat for about 5 or 6 years. Okay, so your population has stopped growing in Oregon. This black curve is every 2 years. What the Secretary of State reports is the number of people eligible to vote. Number of people eligible to vote. And you notice back in the 60s, it was about 70% of the 18 and older population. And I can tell you, because I've studied all the voter rolls for the whole country for about 100 years, that if you have about 70% of your voting age people registered, that's a good, clean voter rolls. That's a healthy voter rolls. That means your clerk is doing their job. They're keeping up with the people moving in, moving out, people dying, that sort of thing. So that's a good, clean voter rolls. And then it got dirty. You notice they got higher percentage, and then your clerks cleaned it up. Good job, clerks. And then it got dirty again, and they cleaned it up again. And it was kind of up and down, you can see, in the early 2000s. And then something really interesting happened in 2014. You see that? Right there, suddenly your voter rolls shot right up past your population. So you have more people in your voter rolls than you have people. Okay? That's a problem. Okay, how did that happen? Did all of your county clerks all run to their computer at once and start adding them? No. That's the year the state took away the voter rolls from your clerks and began controlling and automatically adding people who get driver's licenses and who get cars registered and who go to jail and who gets welfare, etc. In other words, they were automatically pumping the rolls full of names of people who don't even know that they're in the voter rolls and not cleaning out the people who didn't belong there anymore. So they're sort of automatically keeping a buffer of non-real voters in your voter rolls all the time. They've overinflated your voter rolls. Now, if I move that blue line down next to the registration line, so you can kind of see the trend, you'll notice that you have about 700. This is the graph I made about a year and a few months ago. I said, this is a conservative estimate. You have about 700,000 too many people in the voter rolls. And what did we prove in court? They had to remove 800,000. So I wasn't too far off. But really, I wanted to move this line down lower to match the bottom of these peaks, except that you're already at 100% turnout. The red curve is every 2 years how many people vote. You'll notice if they hadn't inflated the voter rolls, you'd have 100% turnout. Okay. Would you believe 100% turnout? No, you wouldn't believe that. That's why they have to inflate the voter rolls. Because you'll notice when they report the statistics from your elections, they don't tell you how many people voted. They say the percent of registered voters. So that is a meaningless number. They've inflated the denominator. It doesn't mean anything. So you have too many people voting. You'll notice that, there's kind of up and down, presidential, midterm, kind of going along. And suddenly there's a jump. See this jump right here? Suddenly you have much more turnout than you used to have. You know what happened that year in 2002? That's the year you added electronic machines to your elections. So counting your ballots with machines increases the total. That's an interesting thing to notice, okay? And then the other thing is there's this huge jump in 2016 and 2018, and that's when they inflated the voter rolls. So in other words, all of these things that are happening to you are not happening because of your local clerk. They're happening because the state is doing something to you. And that's an important thing to see. So a lot of times when I come to a place like this, the county clerk will say, oh, yeah, sure, up there in Multnomah. Yeah, Portland, that's a mess, but not in my county. And I love clerks like that. They're proud of their work. They work hard, and I'm sure Christina's a good gal, and she's proud of her work. Except she'll tell you that her rolls are clean and that she does the work. Except she's wrong. This is all 36 of your counties in Oregon. How many people are registered versus time? And, Multnomah's big and you're tiny. So it's hard to see your county. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow them up and put them all on the same scale so you can see all the counties at once. And what you'll notice is it used to be random how many people were registered in every county until the state took over, and then every county suddenly shot up dramatically. So your county is not exempt from this. Every county has been inflated by the state voter rolls. Now, let's say you go in and you want to register to vote. You go in and talk to Christine. You say, hey, I'm new in town. I want to register. Does she bring out a poll book and add you to the poll book? No. She logs into the state voter roll system and adds you to the state voter roll system. She doesn't have a voter rolls here. She goes somewhere out in the cloud and adds you. And if you go in and say, hey, my father just passed away, you should take him out of the voter rolls, she'll fill out a form and submit it to the state and ask the state to remove them, and they may not bother. They may not remove it. And we find tons of dead people in the voter rolls because of that. The state's not cleaning up as fast as they're adding, which is why you have more people in your voter rolls than you have people. That's happening. They're adding them quickly, but not cleaning up commensurately. So I just want you to see it's every county. Now let me show you how you measure up versus the other states. I want you to get a feeling so that you'll understand why I'm talking to you the way I'm talking to you. So after the 2024 election, I did a study of every state in America. And this is a summary of every state in America. And what I did is I went into each state and I figured out how many people were eligible to vote in a state. They're older than 18, they're a citizen, and I did a lot of work to compile all those statistics. How many people are eligible to vote in every state? And I graphed that on this axis. So what percentage of the voting eligible population is registered in a state? And then on this axis I said, what percentage of those eligible people are voting? So you notice my denominator is not how many people are in the rolls. My denominator, what my percentage is how many people do you have that are eligible to vote? It's a hard number. It's not a number that the state can change willy-nilly. So, now, remember what I told you. I said that a clean voter roll should be right around 70%. If you're above 90%, that's really dirty. You got dirty rolls. And if you're above 100%, that's just stupid. How can you have more people eligible vote than you have people? That just doesn't make any sense. So if you have a state and you had 70% of your eligible people registered and you had 70% of your eligible people who voted, that would be 100%. So this is the 100%. So there won't be any states in that gray area up there. Everything will be all in this area here. And this would be like if you had a 90% turnout or a 75% turnout or 55. So I'm kind of just laying out the grid for you. So now I'm going to start putting the states in here so you can see what this looks like. So before I do that, I guess, this is where I think it ought to be. I've been studying elections since early 1980s, and if you look at history, you'll see this is a good, healthy election. You got 70 to 75% of your people registered, and about 60% of your people are voting. That's a good, healthy election. It sounds a little low, but it's really accurate. And I got all my data from the census and every Secretary of State office. So here we go. Here are these are 9 states that have more people in their voter rolls than they have people. 9 states. And I met my friends from Alaska, and you guys are over there. You have the dirtiest voter rolls in the country. Unfortunately, they're originally from Alaska. There are reasons for that. But you notice that some of these are red states, some of these are blue states. It's not a Democrat versus Republican issue. It's whoever's in control likes having control, and they are controlling their state. So you have 9. So that's preposterous, yes? And here's the rest of the country. And here you guys are here in Oregon. You're in the high 90s. That's after that's only the active voters, not your total rolls. But you'll notice that all the states are out of the green zone. Tennessee, when I did this graph, their numbers weren't updated yet. Now they're updated. They're up in here, and Nevada's up in here, and Maine is up. They're the 10th state that has more people in it. So when I made the graph, I had to use the data I had at the time. But anyway, there's one exception, and that's Wyoming. You see Wyoming there. And they've got clean voter rolls. Oh, wait, don't strain your neck. You're welcome. They've got clean voter rolls. How come they have clean voter rolls? And the answer is because if you miss an election there, they take you off the rolls. And then if you want to vote, you can. You just have to bring your ID and proof of citizenship and proof of residency, and they'll put you back in the rolls again. Now, that's a little aggressive, but you like it. I would rather have that than what we have now, okay? But, that's why, to me, I would like forgiveness. Forgive me one election. If I miss 2, then take me out. But anyway, so that's why they're a little on this side. But you notice their turnout's great, and they've got good, clean voter rolls. So what I like to do with this is I like to explain to people. They've given me this nice pitcher of water here. So look how that beautiful water, all clear and nice. Nice flags. So imagine that we've got this beautiful clean glass of water right here at 55%. Beautiful clean glass. And as we move across, the glass of water gets dirtier and dirtier, just like your voter rolls got dirtier and dirtier, right? Because this is where they ought to be. And as you go this way, they get dirtier and dirtier. So dirtier voter rolls, and then imagine on this axis here that we're drinking more and more of it. So the worst place to be in this graph is up in this corner, because you got the dirtiest voter rolls and you're drinking the most water. You have the most ballots coming in. And where are you guys? You're right up here in this corner. You're among the worst in the country. Maybe the worst, among the worst 5, let's say, your elections. You got too many ballots coming in. And by the way, you guys are so patriotic here. You vote 20% more of the time than Texans do. Huh. You vote 20% more of the time. That's a pretty big difference. And I don't know whether that's real or not. And, you can see versus all these other conservative states. Are you really 10, 15% more patriotic? You vote that much? No, but you have that many more ballots coming in. Ooh, that's a problem. That's a problem. See where I'm going? So that's why this is the bad place to be. If your rolls were clean and you had a high turnout, if you were up in here, I'd love that. But your rolls are dirty and you have a high turnout. So that means you're getting a lot of dirt in your elections. That's the problem. All right, so now I want to teach you an idea. It's called churn. Good water. Thank you for the water. So say you're in Baker County, and let's say that Baker County had 100 people in it. And then let's say 10 people moved out and 10 people moved in. So you had 20 changes out of 100 people. That would be 20% churn. That's what we would call that, because you had 20 changes to your population. And I sat with your sheriff last year in his office and showed him your voter rolls and showed him your population. And he said, your population is churning a few percent a year. That would be normal. So you might have a few percent leaving and a few percent adding every year. That would be a normal churn. And that's what I would expect to see. If this is your 18 and older population, and a clean voter rolls would be about 70% of that population, over time, like this 4-year period of time, you would see some people dying, some people moving away, a few people moving in, a few people becoming 18 and so being able to vote. So this would be a normal churn. And your sheriff agreed with me that would be a normal churn. The problem is, in your state, you've inflated your voter rolls. Beyond that, and what's happening is the state is adding and removing people who are not real voters all the time. It's churning. So they're adding people who don't even know they're in the rolls, and then a couple years later they take them out. Well, what's so bad about that, Dr. Frank? Well, what it means is that there's always a fresh bunch of names that you could stuff a ballot for, and then the state takes them out afterwards, and so you have no way to know. And here's a really good example of that. Up in Washington County here in your state, I was visiting with them earlier this year, and they said, "Oh, Dr. Frank, we found a bunch of new dead voters." "Oh, tell me, how'd you find them?" And he says, "Well, we found 19 of them died in 2011 and 2012 in Washington County, and they didn't vote for 2 election cycles, every 2 years, and then suddenly they started voting in every election." Okay, and then in 2023, the state took them out of the rolls. So if you had just looked at the most recent copy of the voter rolls, you would have missed the fact that there were dead people voting in your election. What that is they're churning them. They're putting in people who are no longer living here, and people are casting ballots for them, and then they're taking them back out of the rolls. So it's like a built-in cover-up. It's a built-in cover-up in your system. That is what's happening in your system. So let's just kind of look at that in a little more detail. So here's Baker County. This is your population since 1980 to present. It's pretty flat. It looks like you're just under 14,000 people that are voting age. Voting age population, about just under 14,000. I showed this to Christina, and she's like, "Yeah, it's about right, about right." So that's your population. Let's just call it flat. How about that? It's pretty flat. Here's the number of people in your voter rolls. And you'll notice that your clerk did a great job. All these, from 1980 up to about 2014, your clerk kept your voter rolls nice and clean, 70%. Good job, clerk, whoever she was, I congratulate her. She was working hard, keeping your rolls clean. But then what happened? The state took over the rolls from you. And the voter rolls then got inflated here in Baker County. In fact, if you didn't have this little census correction in 2020 to your population, this black line would be above that blue line, wouldn't it? And you'd be in the same situation as the rest of the state. You'd have too many people in your voter rolls. So I don't want you to think that I'm blaming your clerk for that, because every county in the state is doing that same thing. And that little gray curve I put underneath, that's monthly, the number of people. And so it's just going like this all the time. Only there was a pretty big jump right before the 2016 election. Isn't that interesting how quickly your rolls grew then to prepare for the 2016 election? All right, but anyway, that's that. And then the number of people who voted in each of your elections, general elections, presidential midterm, you can see this nice oscillation. And you notice after they added the machines, you had the same problem. You got more ballots in. And if I bring the blue that you took off at the same time, your voter rolls are growing faster than your population. If I bring the blue line down, you'll notice that you got about 30% too many people in your voter rolls. Your rolls are growing, but your population isn't. Yep. So that's not your clerk's fault, Stephanie. That's the fact that Stephanie's using the state system. What I want is her back in charge of your rolls, and her cleaning the voter rolls and using those voter rolls to give you your ballots. I don't want the state deciding that anymore, because that's the problem. So if I can do these big statistics, but I also have something else. I have copies of your voter rolls. I have 6 copies of your voter rolls, 1 copy per year. I know the names and addresses of every one of you and how you vote. Not who you vote for, but whether you voted or not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on just these last 5 years, because that's when I have your voter rolls. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So from 1920 to 2025. Actually, when I prepared this a year ago, I didn't have I even have a more recent copy of the rolls, but for this illustration, I prepared it for you guys. So this is the number of people in the voter rolls that I had each time. So if you were the clerk, you would just say, oh, looks like our voter rolls are growing a little bit. Big deal. But I can track the names of every one of these people. And this is the number of people who were in the rolls who are in the rolls now. In other words, every rolls is missing a chunk of the people that were in there before. And that looks like I drew a line. I didn't. These are 4 different data points. It just looks like a line. So why are your rolls shrinking at a constant rate? Sounds like maybe an algorithm is removing them at a steady rate, yes? And by the way, every other county is the same in Oregon, but I'm just talking about you for now. So, but wait a minute, if they're removing all these people, how come the rolls are going up? They must be adding back more than they're removing. So when Tobias Reed says, oh, I'm cleaning the voter rolls, I've taken out 800,000 people, that's not the question to ask. The question is how many did you add back? You go to the bank and you say, how much money did you take out? $20. How much did you deposit? $25. Oh, so now you have more people in the rolls than you did before. Nobody asks him, how many did you add back? They only ask, how many did you take out? See the difference? So in other words, in your county, more people have been added back into the rolls than have been taken out. So this is down here. This is a graph of who was removed. Here's a graph who was added. And that churn is 41% in 4 years. Did your population change 40% in 4 years? Your voter rolls did. Your clerk didn't do that. These are huge numbers of voter rolls. Furthermore, since in that 4-year period of time, out of everybody who voted in this is November right here, in the November 2020 election, 13% of those people had removed. So 1 in 7 of the people who voted are no longer in your rolls. They've churned them out. So if you got a current copy of the voter rolls, you wouldn't know You wouldn't know who voted in the election because it's been cleaned out. Now, here's a summary of this. And there's a rule in public speaking, you never use a table, but I just don't know have a better way to show you this than to just show it. So don't worry too much about the numbers because it's a lot of numbers. The point is I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 copies of your voter rolls spaced about a year apart. And in 2021, you had about 15,000 people in the voter rolls, and this year you got about close to 16,000. So you went up about, from here to here, it looks like you went up about 500. Your population changed 3% in that 5-year period of time. So basically you're flat. Your population didn't change. But your churn, their 5-year churn is 59%. Your population, your voter rolls churned 59% in 5 years. Did your population churn 59% in 5 years? No. That's the state doing this. So when I show your clerk, I make this claim to your clerks, they always say, "You're wrong, Dr. Frank, that cannot be right. I'm the one in control of my voter rolls. I'm the one who adds and removes people." And I say, "Well, simply, how many did you add last year and how many did you remove?" And they usually give me a number. And then I show them how many were actually added or removed. Like in this year, 500 were removed and 1,000 were added. And the next year, 700 removed and 1,000 were added. Next year, 700 removed, 1,000. Was she doing all that adding and removing? No. She was adding dozens, not hundreds of people. Now, what's cool is I have these voter rolls. And by the way, they removed some more of your voters. So in that 5-year period, from January of 21 up to March of 2026, they've removed 1 in 6 of the people who voted in the 2020 election. So if you were trying to find fraud in the 2020 election today, it's too late. They've already taken out 1/6 of the people who voted. You've already lost that information. Go ahead, ask your clerk. Stephanie, can you give me a list of everybody who voted in the 2020 election? She can't do it. Because the list isn't in her possession. It's out in the cloud. And people have already been taken off that list. She doesn't have the list. She's not managing the list. That's the problem with the system. It's not under your control. Now, I just want to show you one more thing, and then I want to show you your own voter rolls, and we'll look a couple up. It'll be fun. So, in summary, here's your county, and you can see your population's flat and your voter rolls are growing. You have too much voting. I already showed that. You've got about 3,000 too many people in your voter rolls. 3,000, that's about 28%. Let's just say that if you had 4 people in your voter rolls, one of them doesn't belong there. And I'm going to show you your voter rolls in a minute, and you're going to see that I'm not wrong. We'll look up your own address. You'll be surprised in your own neighborhood how that works. But one more thing before I do that, I just want to talk about this. This is an amazing thing. This blue curve, the x-axis is age, from 0 to 110 years old. So this blue curve is how many people you have in Baker County of each age. So clearly, and I did this for the 2020 election, clearly the most common age is 65 years old, 5 years ago. So the most common age today is probably around 70 in Baker County. You can see that's your age demographics. The black curve is who's considered an active voter, and you've got more active voters registered than you have people. And then this includes the inactive voters, the gray curve. So you definitely got too many people in your voter rolls. Lots of people, more than your population. You shouldn't have that. The red curve shows you how many people voted in the 2020 election. And I just want you to look at this for a minute. Look at the black curve. That's who's registered. And look at the red curve. That's who voted. And what do you notice about those two curves? They're pretty similar. They kind of look a lot alike, don't they? So I'm going to make an assumption. And the assumption I'm going to make is that every county in Oregon votes exactly the same by age. And you're going to say, that's a dumb assumption. That can't be true. We don't vote the same as Portland. We don't vote the same as, Klamath or Josephine County. We're different. We're different out here. But if I make that assumption, then I predict for Baker County this light blue curve under the red. And that's a 0.996 correlation coefficient. Now, I'm a scientist, and when I'm doing experiments, if I get a 0.7, I'm really excited. A 1 would be perfect. So for me, to get a .996, I know something's wrong with that. There's something that ain't natural, buddy, as Mr. Lindell and I were joking. Here's Malheur County, .978. Notice, and I was just there this morning. Or how about, I've got a bunch of these. I guess I don't have them in this slide. Well, I could do, just so you, I just want you to understand. I'm going to go ahead and stop that. I'm just going to share my screen with you for a second. Check this out. I'm going to show you every county in your state. I just want you to see they're all the same. How could they all be the same, Dr. Frank? So I'm just going to go ahead and run them. Notice the correlation coefficients over here, 0.997, 0.999, 0.998, 0.998, 0.996, 0.997. Every one of these counties, why even have an election? I can tell you how many people of every age is going to vote in every one of your counties. Now, if you think about, I just didn't want you to think I was cherry picking. Every single county is the same. So there are 3 parts to an election. Who you sign up to vote, that's the rules. When you vote, how do you vote and how do you count it up? And then how do you report it? Those are the 3 parts of an election. So I already proved to you that you're out of control of your voter rolls. Now I'm showing you that you're out of control of your turnouts too, because they're the same in every single county. That can't be right. You know that can't be right. And then the reporting. So I haven't done this with Stephanie, but I've done this hundreds of times. I sit down with a clerk and I say, how many people voted in your election? She'll give me a number. Let's say it's 100. I say, did you ever log onto the Secretary of State website and check and see if the number you reported is the number that's there? And the clerks look at me like, what? Of course it's going to be the same. I'm the one who reports it. I say, well, let's just look. And I bring out my laptop. We log into the Secretary of State. We bring up your county. And it's always more. It's always more. Wait a minute. And she'll look at that. I'm telling you, if I sat down with Stephanie today, that's what would happen. Now, if she sees this recording, she'll go do it herself, and it won't be a surprise. But the point is, it has never matched, not one time. So the clerk's numbers don't match the official numbers. So that's 3 parts now. We got 1 part, you're not in control of the rolls. 2, you're not in control of how the machines count or tabulate, because they're all the same. And 3, you're not in charge of the reporting either. What's going on with this? These are not real elections. They're synthetic. And that's why Mr. Lindell got so excited about my work, and he made that movie about me, that documentary. So if I bring that up here, here we go. I'm sharing my screen. Mr. Lindell made that movie. I'm getting there. I jumped around a lot today, and I substituted a lot of stuff for the Korea stuff. I could talk for hours. God made me this way. Okay, here we go. I started this election work in Pennsylvania, and Doug Mastriano asked for an audit there, and I was part of the team that did the audit in Pennsylvania. It was a full forensic audit, the only one we've ever had in the country. And Mr. Lindell found out about it. He made a movie about me, and he called it Scientific Proof. And that suddenly made me famous. 12 million people knew who I was, and we've been friends ever since. He made another documentary called Absolute Interference. It's a 2-hour movie. This one is just about my work. It's an hour long. This one has some other work as well, but the first half an hour is more my work. Then President Trump found out about my work, and he featured me at his first rally after he was out of office in Wellington, Ohio. And his instructions to me were, Dr. Frank, explain to the world how they stole my election. So I got to talk to 21,000 people live there, and millions of people around the world, because they all tuned in. They want to hear what Trump's going to say now that he's out of office. So that was a big deal. So why did I mention that? I had a reason for mentioning that. Oh, because in the early days, I thought the way to win this battle was by showing people the math. And I was going around the country teaching everybody, this can't be real. So even though I can show you that the election's not real, it didn't work. It didn't move people to take action. So over time, I developed something I call the 7 steps. And this has been working really well all around the country. And we've formed a 7 steps team here in Baker. We got connected. That way you collect the wisdom of the United States. You get organized. We formed a team here. We make a local strategy. We meet with the commissioners. That's here. And we're going to implement the strategy, and we're going to build a movement. We're going to build a movement here. Why are we going to build a movement? because the evidence isn't enough. When I was talking to Christina today, I showed her all the evidence. She has all the data she needs. Why doesn't she just make a decision? Because she needs 50 of you standing in the room saying, we're not going to put up with this anymore. The people have to rise up. The people empower the leaders. We shouldn't expect our leaders to stand up by themselves, just like we shouldn't expect Trump to fix the country. We are fixing the country from the bottom up. The counties need to have the people get awake and get involved. What's really wrong with our elections? Everybody thinks, like Mr. Lindell will say, oh, it's the machines. We got to get rid of the machines. He's not wrong. We got to get rid of the machines. We got to get rid of mail-in voting. Yeah, we got to get rid of mail-in voting. But there are about a dozen things that are wrong. It's not those things. The problem is in every state, and I mean every state in America, elections are centrally controlled, like here. It's just particularly bad here. And that's why we're losing our voice. And the way to think about that is, when I was in college, we had a central computer on campus. And then around campus, we had these terminals, and we called them dumb terminals because they didn't have any software in them, any files or nothing. All they did was talk to the computer. They're dumb terminals, so we called it. Well, that's the way our elections are run, and your county officials are just dumb terminals. Like I said, if you want to register somebody to vote, she doesn't add somebody to your voter rolls. She logs into the state and adds somebody to the voter rolls. If you want to delete somebody, she logs into the state. If you ask a clerk, tell me about how you run your elections, what does she do at the end of the day? She takes a stick out of the tabulator, a memory stick, and she walks over and plugs it into a computer that connects to the state. She's not even counting the ballots. And what did Stalin say? Stalin said, it's enough that the people know there was an election. The people who cast the votes decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything. When's the last time you counted a vote? When's the last time your clerk counted a vote? You see where I'm going? You're not in control of your elections. Any part of it, all of it has been moved somewhere else, out in the cloud. All three parts are out of your control. The solution isn't just getting rid of machines or just cleaning the voter rolls. The solution is bringing it back local. You have to bring it back local where you watch everything, you scrutinize everything. And we did it for hundreds of years. We know how to do it. Where you have a local poll book, you give a ballot to the local people, they vote right there, you put the ballots in a box. At the end of the day, you take the ballots out and you count them. That's the way all of Europe does it right now, and they do their elections in one day. There's no reason we can't do that as well. We've just been convinced that we have to do it this way. Tobias Reed says, oh, we love our mail-in voting. Oh, yeah, so you're going to sacrifice the integrity of your election for convenience. And you're going to expose your election to cheating. Why would you do that? Stop that. Knock it off. All right. So anyway, that's what's going on. All right. So the solution is taking back local control. Now, you guys here in Baker, you guys are ES&S. That's the easiest system in the country to hack. There's a modem in it. It's a 4G modem. We proved this in court in Michigan because they have the same machines as you. They're super easy to hack. I have the passwords. It's a phone modem. It's funny, I just came from Wisconsin. They have the same machines there. And the clerks in northern Wisconsin were telling me at the end of the day, they don't bother with a memory stick. They just take the machine and roll it over next to the window so it can call the cell tower and report the numbers. But the machines aren't supposed to be able to connect to the internet. But they do. In fact, in your state, in the Washington County case that we did back in 2022 in your state, what happened was one of the citizens asked for a copy of the voter rolls, and the local clerk there in Washington County said, no, I'm not giving them to you. So we went to the DA, and the DA said, you have to give it to him. That's the law. But the clerk didn't know what she was doing, and she had accidentally gave him a complete backup of their entire EMS system. Okay, the entire EMS system. When the Secretary of State found out, she instructed the AG to file a restraining order, and it says right in the restraining order, quote, even when systems are not directly connected to networks, they are vulnerable to attack through physical or wireless access. This is your own Secretary of State and your own Attorney General admitting that all of your machines can be attacked wirelessly. Okay? That makes them, by the way, illegal to use for federal elections. And that's why the DOJ sued you guys and showed this. So you guys are under no obligation to use illegal systems. Why don't you comply instead with federal law? But don't do it alone. Let's get 10 other counties to join with you, because it's hard to fight by yourself. It's easier to fight as a group. That's the point I'm making to you today. All right, so what else do I need to show you before I wrap this up? Oh, yeah. So President Trump posted this last year in August. He said, and I helped him write this, so it's a little too long. Typical for me, I have too many words. Says, I'm going to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots. Whoa, that puts you right in the crosshairs. You guys started this in 1997. And also while we're at it, highly inaccurate, very expensive, and seriously controversial voting machines. Well, there you go. It puts you right in the crosshairs, which costs 10 times more than accurate and sophisticated watermark paper, which is faster, leaves no doubt, and at the end of the evening as to who won and who lost, blah, blah, blah. And when I was talking to Christina about this, I said to her today, by the way, not only are you saving money because you're not using these dumb machines and paying for the service contracts and all that stuff on them, but you're going to take 30% out of your election budget because you're not mailing ballots to all those people that don't belong there. You're saving money and you're improving the integrity of your election. Commissioners love saving money. That's a big deal. But all this stuff we could go through, but the most important thing he said was, I am going to lead a movement. I don't care if the SAVE Act passes or not. It's basically impotent. Even if they pass it in its current form, it won't repair the problem. The problem is not just one thing. The problem is that you're not in control of your election. That's the problem. We got to get you in control. And, politicians don't start parades, they join them. So you have to start the parade. We are starting the parade. That's what the 7 steps is all about. And this Korean thing has really, really tweaked my heart and tweaked my mind and tweaked my perception of the world. I love what Reagan said.
Freedom is a fragile thing, and it's never more than one generation away from extinction. It is not ours by way of inheritance. It must be fought for and defended constantly by each generation, for it comes only once to a people. And those in world history who have known freedom and then lost it have never known it again.
Anybody know what that speech is from? Reagan's inauguration speech for governor of California back in the 60s. And when I think about this quote, I don't remember in my lifetime ever fighting for and defending constantly my freedom. I remember in my lifetime enjoying the lab for 40 years and federal grants so I can do my research and earn money and raise my family. I never remember fighting for my freedom. Thank you for fighting in Vietnam. Okay? So that's a little bit of a tinge of guilt there for me, and that's why I'm fighting for it now. This is my tour duty now. I don't charge for being here. I'm fighting for you guys, for our country. But think about it. Those who have known freedom, like South Korea, and then lost it, have never known it again. They are right on that cusp, and they know it, and they are panicking right now in South Korea. It gives that quote all new meaning.
Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
So that was Trump's first inauguration speech, 2017, and I remember watching that live. Maybe some of you did too, and boy was I excited. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm so glad Hillary's not president, and I'm so glad that Trump is president. And I remember thinking to myself, now he's going to fix everything, and I went and golfed that day. But that isn't what he said. He said he was giving the power back to you, the people. But we didn't take the baton, did we? We just sat back and waited for him to do it. And how did that work out for us? Didn't work out, did it? And he hasn't quit fighting. It's funny, listen to the Korean people. They all do fight, fight, fight. They left Trump.
Have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together.
How? So, one of my friends, Chris Ann Hall, she's a famous constitutional scholar. I love her to death. She's awesome. She says we're in the Trump slump. She says we got Trump elected, now everybody's sitting back waiting for him to fix everything. No, we're the solution. Sorry, we're the solution. We are the
people have told me
we're the mission, we're the together that Trump is saying. So what I'm doing is I'm coming to you with a plan. I'm coming to you with a plan that you need to be involved, you need to engage. It's the 7 steps. But the whole point of the plan is to build this movement. Because when you have 50 people or 100 people showing up at your county commissioner meetings every week, or every other week, is it here that they meet? And you're bringing cases of fraud, that's how you're going to win. Now, here's the homework assignment I want to give you guys. I'm a teacher, so you got to forgive me. I got to have a homework assignment. I'm going to show you your own voter rolls. This is fun. You're going to like this. It's loading. Okay, you already saw my summary sheet. Here's January of 21 rolls, January of 22 rolls, January of 23 rolls. See how I have each of the rolls? I have each of the rolls. And in between each of them, I show you who is added and removed every time. So I've got all of that evidence. But you don't need all that. All you need is the merged one, where we take the most recent one and add back in everybody who was removed. Remember my Washington County illustration. They took out the people who were dead and voting in 2023. So we're going to put them back in so we can find them. See how that works? Because the churn is constantly taking out the fraud out of your rolls. So we're going to put it back in, and we're going to be able to find the fraud now in your elections. So I call that a merged data set. So it's going to be bigger than 15,000 because 15,800 because it includes everybody that's been removed. So how big is it? Not 15,800, it's 20,000 because you had so many more people in your rolls. Remember, you had about a 60% churn, like 58% churn like that. All right, so let's zoom in a little bit here. So this is Baker County merged rolls. Let's just start right at the top because I don't want you to think I'm cherry picking. So here we go. So I don't know this person, Jacob Bork. Some of you might know him. He lives at 2705 10th Street, and he's in the voter rolls. And he was age 34 as of 2020. Since I have so many voter rolls, I picked 1 year as my reference, and I picked a 0 to make it easy because it's probably 40 now, right? It's easy to add to 2020. So Jacob Borg, and his propensity, he's voted 7 times, and if you want to know which elections those are, it's over here. They're all listed, which elections he voted in. But I made that easy here. So Jacob Bork's been an active voter, each of the years in the 6 copies of the voter rolls I have. And he voted in 2018, voted in 2020 general election, 22, 24, and he did not vote in the 2025 election, but he was mailed a ballot. Okay? And then this says he voted in Baker County as well. If somebody had moved into your county and voted in 2020, it would show here, but not here. So if I just look at the very next address, here's an interesting address, right next door to I'm just starting right at the top of the list, 2719 10th Street. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 different last names at that address. Now, it could be perfectly legit. I don't know. But I know that you're sending a ballot to every one of those people every election. So I don't know whether but it's interesting because these 2 people have never voted. Ever. But they've been in the rolls since 2012 and 2010. Wait a minute. They've been in the rolls since 2010. They've never voted, and you're mailing a ballot to them every time. Not only is that wasteful, that's illegal. Federal law and state law even says if you miss 2 federal elections, they're supposed to mail you a postcard and check and see if you're still there. And if you don't answer the postcard, then they make you inactive. And then if you miss another election, they're supposed to take you out. That's why you lost the lawsuit, the Digital Watch lawsuit, because we proved you're not removing people you're supposed to remove. and you had to remove at least 800,000. Those two sound to me like two people that were supposed to be removed. But it's not just that they needed to be removed. You're wasting money. Think about it. These people have never voted, and maybe there's a good reason, so I'm not saying anything bad about these people. But they have been mailed ballots for at least 6 years in a row, 8 years in a row. And if there were 2 elections per year, that's 16 ballots at $10 a piece. That is 160 times 2, because there are 2 of them. That's $320 your county wasted. I haven't even scrolled the page yet. So in other words, you're wasting huge amounts of money, of your county money as well. And when you mail these ballots out to people who aren't real voters, you're also creating the situation where people can just scrape those up and use them to cheat. And we have convictions on that around the country that happens quite a bit. So just for fun, now that you kind of understand how to look at this, who wants to volunteer? We'll look up your address. Anybody want to see your own address? I do this in every county, and it's eye-opening. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, what's your residence? 3350 Estes Street. There you are. You are Jody. Nice to see you. Looking pretty good for a 60-year-old. Okay. Right, because you were 20 and you were 55 in 2020, right? And you're probably 61 now, right? But Stephen, that's probably your husband, and you vote a lot. Good job. You have a propensity, and I can see you're registered as Republicans. Good job. And you vote a lot. It looks like Stephen didn't vote in the 2025 election for some reason. Now, you might say, yes, he did. I saw him fill out his ballot and turned it in. But the state and the county has not accepted his ballot. It was not. So if he were to say, I did too vote, you could say, aha, this is voter suppression. Right? You see how that works? But maybe he missed it. Maybe he was out of town or fishing or whatever. You have good fishing in your state, so maybe he was fishing that day. But you're active in the rolls the whole time. Anyway, you could see that's you, and you are at Estes Street. Now, it looks like next door to you, they're the Bornsteads, Drummonds, Huttons, and Risus. Do you know any of these people? They're your neighbors. $32.50. You're at $33.50. They're at $32.50. So a block down from you, I guess. But maybe you're out in the country. Maybe that's a long distance. So do you know your neighbors? That's all you know. They've been in the rolls the whole last 5 years, and they vote in every election, and they have good propensity, and they're similar age to you. So, but there's this old person, Dwayne Hutton, who was 92 in 2020. Is he still living there? Same address. He's been removed in the last 2 years, but he was in the rolls for years. I'm not saying he was dead, but he probably was. Maybe that's who it is. Now, the reason I like looking up people like this is because you know your neighbors. I don't know your neighbors. And when I show this to people, they're immediately like, wait a minute, that person's dead. How come he's still active in the rolls? Or they'll say, hey, that person moved to Texas 5 years ago. How come they're still getting a ballot? You see stuff, I don't know these people. This is your neighborhood. So my homework assignment to you is you guys are going to sign up when you leave, and we're going to contact you, and we're going to give you this, just a few pages, for your own neighborhood. And you're going to say, wait a minute, this isn't right. This isn't right. And you're going to mark a few of them, and you're going to turn them back to our team, and then we're going to investigate. And when we find actual fraud or cheating or whatever, we're going to come back to you and say, we've investigated, here's the evidence. We want you to go and stand before the county commissioner and say, Dr. Frank came to town and he gave us our copy of our road rolls, and I looked and here it is, right in my own neighborhood. This is not okay. Do you see the difference between Dr. Frank standing in front of the commissioners and giving all the statistics versus individual citizens one at a time standing before the commissioners and saying, there's fraud in my neighborhood, there's illegal voting in my neighborhood, there are dirty voter rolls in my own neighborhood, and we're wasting huge amounts of county funds. This is irresponsible and illegal and breaking federal law. Why are we doing this? Let's join those other counties and let's have clean elections. See how powerful that is? That is what I'm proposing to you. But I need volunteers, which is why I like giving these the bigger talks, because the small talks with just the team, they do all the work. It's better to have 50 people, each looking in their own neighborhood. Way better, because it's like instant movement, because everybody sees this is real. Who else would like to give an example of what your house, where's your residence? Who else? Yes, ma'am.
3450 Kirkway Drive.
Kirk, like K-R-K?
Correct.
Kirkway, there you are.
Yep.
And so you're Marcia.
Marcia.
Sorry. Marcia, and you're Byron? Thanks for your service again, brother. Who's Leah Goodall and Joyce Munson and Terry Smith? Do they live there too?
No, they don't.
How long have you lived there? A little over a year. So they used to live there.
Who knows?
Oh, you're renting there or something like that, or you just bought the house? Okay, because it looks like these three, you're the cooks, these three were in the rolls, and these two are still in the rolls listed as inactive, but you know, and I know, they don't live there.
We still get their mail, too.
You still get their mail, too.
Yes.
Did you get any ballots for them?
We have gotten ballots from Alaska.
From Alaska? Oh, that's right, you were my Alaska friends. So no, they were the Alaska friends. So if you get a ballot for somebody who isn't supposed to be getting it, if you're not supposed to be getting it, don't throw it away. People say, oh, I destroyed that ballot. No, keep it. We're collecting a big pile of those. And we're going to take them and we're going to hand them to this and say, what we're talking about is real. Now, I did this in Washington County a couple months ago, and the first one I looked up like this, the lady said, it says there that I voted in 2020, but I didn't. I was in Southern California taking care of my mother who was passing away. And so we researched it. Absolutely. The records, the official records show that a ballot was cast using her name, and she didn't vote. She signed an affidavit, and then we put her in front of the commissioners in Washington County and she said, you guys somebody cheated. Somebody used my name to cast a ballot, and you counted it. You see how this is going? So now you're new, so you may not know your neighbors yet. But at least we looked at your own house, and even by the way, I'm 2 for 2. You noticed? Yes, ma'am. The Darlingtons. Here we go. Yep. What about them? Doug still lives here, she said, but Timothy is still active in the rolls.
Doug, he lives right across the road from us.
You know him.
The lady died in December. Alberta, I think, died in September.
3470. You notice what I've done is I've shaded them. It's hard to see on this screen, but I've shaded them so that it's bright, dark, bright, dark. I could turn my projector down here. I should have done that. I forgot to do that. Hang on one second. Let me just help you out. Let's see.
Alberta is dead. She passed in December.
I'm going to turn down the brightness here. Sorry. Brightness, go down. There you go. See how the shading is easier to see? Let's do that. Okay. You can see the shading better. You can see each household a little better. Okay. So, yes. So you're saying that she passed away and they took her out of the rolls as well, I noticed. So that's good. And so they're not mailing. So they did that one right.
I think the other one is his son.
Ernie.
Is that the son?
88 years old?
No.
Yeah, and he was taken out of the rolls too. So just for an example, let's say that it says here he voted in 2020. But let's say we look up his obituary. And let's say it says he died in 2019. Well, how did he vote in 2020 then? So we find dead voters that way. We find people who have passed away, but they still are recorded as having voted. That's another example. What about this is an interesting address. You got 2 different last names at the same address. And they're all active and all voting. No, these 3 are not voting. I bet you these people don't live there. And they've never voted. They're young, yes. I don't know what that means. Maybe they're college students and they don't live there anymore. But they're different last names. That's weird. But anyway, that's why I like using local knowledge, because you know your own neighbors and you're going to say, oh yeah, that's Johnny. He went to college 5 years ago. He doesn't live there anymore. Well, why is he still in the rolls? There's another thing that happens. We were up in Washington County. I keep using them for example, but I spent a lot of time up there recently. And somebody bought a caterer lunch. They brought us a catered lunch. And when the caterer walked in the room, we were all doing this. We were working on the rolls together with my team. And so just on a whim, I said, yeah, thanks for the delicious lunch. What's your address? And we looked up our address, and it was her and her husband and her 2 children. And they're like in their 30s. And I said, your 30-year-old kids still live with you? And she says, oh, no, they live in another county. They live over there. But we still get their ballots at our house. I said, why? That's illegal. You have to receive the ballot for where you live. I don't get to vote on your school board when I live in a different county, and you don't get to vote on my school board. I don't get to vote for your mayor, and you don't get to vote. You have to vote where you live. That's the law. So not only do we find fraud where people are cheating, stuffing a ballot using somebody's name, but we also find illegal voting where people are voting in the wrong precincts and voting in the wrong counties. They're getting the wrong ballot. And we've overturned elections. We just overturned an election this year in Maine for people voting in the wrong town. They were in the same county, but in the wrong town, and they were voting on a town election. And we overturned that election. The people lived in Bahaba, but they were voting in Ellsworth, and they're not supposed to vote there. And we were able to overturn an election. So there are all these kinds of things that are happening. Why? Because you're not voting in person at your precinct. If you're voting in person at your precinct, we'd say, you're not in this precinct. You don't belong here. We're not going to let you vote here. Go back to your own precinct. That's what's supposed to be happening. Somebody else want to try your address? It's fun, don't you think? Yes. Who wants to try? Yes, ma'am.
3055 10th Street.
10th? Yes. There you are. And you must be Christina?
No, it's student accommodations, it's veterans housing and low-income housing, and there's been a lot of turnover at 3055.
Well, they're all inactive, and they've never voted. So they're not supposed to be in the rolls. So when I say you have too many people in the voter rolls, I'm not exaggerating. I'm running 3 for 3 or 4 for 4 now, aren't I? I didn't make this up, and I'm going to give this to you. There was another interesting one. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. Oh, yeah, 17th Street. You reminded me because of your address. On 17th Street, there's a rest home. Oh, it's not street, just 17th. I'll just say 17th. There it is. Okay. And I noticed that the apartments, they're listed as apartments at that address, 2895. I guess some of them don't even have apartment numbers associated with it. But these are obviously, a rest home is going to be a place where somebody checks in and they live there for a few years and then they pass away. And then somebody else moves in and they occupy that room and they live there a few years. And people are in their declining years. So you expect a lot of turnover. But when that happens, you're supposed to take the old one out and put in the new one, right? Oops. What do we notice? We notice, for example, at a lot of these, these 2 people are at, one of them never voted, and yet they're at that same address. Or here's another one where they're at the same address. Or here's another one, 2 different last names, but they're both in the rolls. Or here's 1, 2, 3 different people were in that one, and you notice that at one point, all 4 of them were in the rolls at once. No, it doesn't make sense. When you go, and you're mailing ballots. So imagine the box of ballots that's arriving at this rest home for all these people that aren't there anymore. You're creating an opportunity for someone like the League of Voters to come in and collect them. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. The League of Women Voters has a booth in the center square at UCLA where they have a sign above it that says, bring your ballot here, we'll give you $200. And so the students all bring their ballots, and the League of Women Voters give them $200 apiece, and then the students go back to their dorm rooms and order ballots for all the other guys on the floor, and they bring them up. It's a lot of beer and pizza you can buy with that money. So I'm not exaggerating when I say that there are NGOs, non-government organizations, we found 83 of them in Pennsylvania, for example, that are going out there harvesting all these excess ballots, and then they submit the ballots according to an algorithm, which is why the turnouts are all the same. All right, you getting the idea? Who else wants to try your address? Yes, ma'am. 2415 Ash. Like what we have in the air right now. So you must be Carla. Nice to meet you, Carla. Looking good. All right. Let's see. Oh, you're a good voter. 13 is the best you can be, because I can only track in my software I wrote to do this. I can only track up to 13 elections. So you vote a lot. You've been active. Nobody else has registered your address, just you. And you can see there you are consistently. Do you know your neighbors? You're at 2415, 2395 looks like one direction. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 different people at that address. And 2 doors down, 1, 2, 3 different last names at that address. And you'll notice that all these inactives and actives are in the rolls. I picked every one of these by random, right? What did I say? For every 3 people that should be in there, there's going to be 1 that shouldn't be. Are you seeing that's about what the pattern we're seeing? So I didn't make any of this up. This is legit. And you know your neighbors, and you're going to be able to look at that, and I can tell your mind's clicking. What, you seeing something you want to see? Further down on Ash. You got the Horns and the Peters. They were all getting ballots at the same time. An interesting combination of ages. That's their age as of 2020. Oh, A Street, sorry, not Ash Street, sorry. Yeah, what I did is I sorted them by precinct. So there's a piece of that precinct, it's not much of that street, but we could sort by street as well and give you that. You're telling me something. Telling me to stop? Oh, what's your address?
1611 Valley.
16? 1611 Valley. There you are.
Right, and those are kids that, were getting driver's licenses, and they've never received their ballots because they don't live there.
But it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ballots should be going there every election.
Pretty much.
Pretty much. But they don't live there.
Right, because they were, now they're 18, now they can vote.
Let's see. Oh, they were registered as NAVs. We were talking about this earlier with my friend in the back. When you have a non-affiliated voter, those are the ones that are put in automatically. They don't even know they're in the rolls. And when they were 16, they were put in. These 2 people, Deborah and William, you're both Republicans, so I'm guessing that's you. And then there are also 2 Democrats registered there.
Those names I don't even know.
Why are they in the rolls?
And I don't know if they ever lived there.
How long have you lived there?
Near 5 years.
Near 5 years. So it looks like the last time they were active was 2021. So that's about right. And then one of them stayed inactive for 1 more year after that. You don't think those are the names who live there? Okay, well.
Yeah, it's that's just an example of it.
Yeah, but there it is. So right there, how many ballots is that? 4, 5, 6, oh, whoa. That's $80 that you wasted right there as a county. And we're not even trying. Can you imagine if we use the NCOA, the National Change of Address, that's the post office records, and we use the PCOA, that's what commercial publishers use and commercial mail houses use to clean, because they're not allowed to send bulk mail to a bunch of junk places. If you use those lists, we could take 30% of the people out of your rolls right now. You'd save 30% on your budget. Just boom, just like that. And could you use that money in this county? I think you could definitely use the money. So why are you wasting it, and at the same time you're throwing away the integrity of your elections? So anyway, I think that's sort of a fun way to show you what we're going to be doing. And sign up, and then what will happen is the team, our local team, if you want to be on the team, sign up for that too. Say, hey, I want to be on the team, I want to help. And then we'll get you a copy of your voter rolls for your community, and you can research them yourself if you want, but don't go public with it. Bring it back to the team, because we like to vet everything before we go public. We don't want any mistakes in public. My favorite story about that is in Fresno, California. We had about 20 dead voters, all confirmed, people that died in 2005, 2006, voted in like 6 or 7 elections before they were taken out of the rolls. And we had, the sheriff had verified it, the clerk had verified it, everything was beautiful. And we were holding a public event. We brought in Carrie Lake, we brought in Kash Patel, big names. We all spoke at this big event. And then the press was there interviewing, and one of the team members said, oh yeah, we're finding new dead voters every day. In fact, just today I found a guy at, I don't remember his name, John Smith at 123 Apple Tree Lane, and we just found another one today. What did the press do? They looked it up, and the next day John Smith showed up. He wasn't dead. And so nothing goes public. What do you think the press talked about? The 20 people we had that were dead, that we had all the documentation and the death certificates? Or did they talk about that? No, they talked about the one mistake the one guy made. So we don't like anybody to go public except it's been vetted by our team. So we're sending you out. Bring the information back, we'll vet everything, and then we'll start reading it into the public record a bit at a time, because we want to be that squeaky wheel, that drip, drip, drip that drives everybody crazy. That's what we want to be. And then the commissioner, we're empowering the commissioners then to make a decision and join the other counties. That's what we're doing. How'd I do? Any questions for me? Or I'll end right there, and thank you very much. Yes.
How are the counties determined? I mean, do you already know which 10 or 11 counties we're going to join?
I have a pretty good idea. How many counties do we have with teams, Teresa? About 15, 20 at least. Maybe 25 counties. And it's a good question. We have different levels of county, and I didn't talk about that. So I have slides, but I'm just going to cut to the chase. We have 4 different kinds of counties. We have what I call lead counties. I think you guys are a lead county. It's a county where you got good people, conservative people, you got a majority of your commissioners on board with the idea, and you're going to be willing to stand with other counties to make that first stand. So it's like you're the ones invading Normandy. Okay, you're the first on the beach. You're going to, and if we have about 10 of those, and I think we have that many, that are going to be willing to do that stand. Then there's going to be other counties where, like Multnomah, there's no way Multnomah is ever going to be a lead county. But we have a team there, and they're finding fraud in their elections. So imagine that 10 counties stand up together and say, we're not going to use these illegal systems anymore. Multnomah could say, hey, we have the same problem in our county. How come our commissioners aren't defending our civil rights? Because every one of these fraudulent ballots is nullifying one of our real ballots. That's it's a violation of our constitutional rights, our civil rights. How come you're not doing that? Wouldn't it be nice if 10 counties stand up and then another 5 or 10 say, yeah, we have the same problem. How come? See what this? So I call those the Me Too counties. So we got the lead counties, the Me Too counties, and then I think once that starts happening, there'll be more counties that say, well, don't forget us. We want to join in too. And they're the ones who are afraid to do anything, but once they see that there's a group, they'll join in. They find their spine in a group. And then there's the type 4 counties that never in a million years, hell will freeze over before we do anything counties like Multnomah. And we don't waste time there. We're focusing. So I think you guys are one of those lead counties. And after talking to your commissioners, after talking to your sheriff, by the way, I love sheriffs. They're awesome. Their office, if you want to become a police officer, your job is to enforce the law. If you're a sheriff, your job is to defend the civil rights of your citizens. They swear a different oath. And so sheriffs will interpose on your behalf. So if you've got your commissioners saying, we're not going to use this illegal system, and the sheriffs link elbows and say, yeah, we're defending our citizens' civil rights, it forms a strong coalition. So I like working with the sheriffs, which is why I meet with them too. So if we got your majority of your commissioners and your sheriffs on board and the counties are saying we're not going to comply, that's great. Then what will happen is the clerk will say, oh, but I have to do what the Secretary of State says. And the sheriff can say, no, you don't, because that system's illegal. We don't have to comply with an illegal system. And she says, oh, but they might come in. Okay, well, whatever. But guess what? The commissioners just cut your budget by 30% because they're not going to have to spend as much this time because they're going to demand you use the legal voter rolls instead of the illegal ones. And by the way, President Trump just put it on whitehouse.gov that he will help you get that clean voter rolls and help you take out the non-citizens and et cetera, et cetera. So in other words, all this infrastructure is coming into place to help you do it right. You have no excuse to continue doing it wrong. I saw your hand, brother.
My question is on your 18-year-olds, where were you getting that data from?
Oh.
Our 18-year-olds in our school system decreasing, not increasing, as you had on your 18-year-old chart, and I was just wondering.
Okay. I understand what you just said, and let me bring that up, and let me bring up your county in particular, and we'll look at that. Yes, Teresa. Thank you, Teresa. My wife appreciates that. In February of 2021, I was really depressed, and I told my wife we've lost our country because the Supreme Court just rejected our cases from Pennsylvania, and I said the legislatures don't want to fix it, the fraud is real, the courts aren't going to fix it, we're in trouble. That's when Mr. Lindell called me. He made the movie about me, and suddenly 12 million people knew who I was. And I was getting all these requests around the country for help, and I prayed about it. I said, okay, God, what do you want me to do? If you want me to do this, okay. And so I went up and told my wife, honey, I'm going to set aside my income for 6 months. We're going to save the country. And then I'm going to be back to work. And that was almost 6 years ago now. So it's been tough to not have any income, but God's been providing. So I appreciate your help. But that's another story. So let me come back to your question. This is the number of 18 and olders in your county. And there's a little census correction. So where did I get those data? That's from the U.S. Census, where I got these blue data. How many people are 18 and older in your county?
That doesn't jive with the number of high school seniors that we have.
It's been decreasing.
So that can't,
Well,
statistically, you can't increase the number of 18-year-olds and decrease the number of 18-year-olds in our schools.
but there could be older people that move in, and that could, because this is 18 and older. So there could be other people who move in that keep it flat. I'm not disagreeing with you. Your population, don't think of it as 18-year-olds. Don't think of it as 18-year-olds. Think of it as your adult population. Your adult population is flat.
Okay, if you look at our traffic or our ODOT,
Yeah.
our traffic
Yeah.
is not driving with the population.
I'm not arguing with you. I think,
I'm wondering how we can, is there a way of
in other words, what you're telling me is this blue line is lower than it is, which is what I think so too.
I joke with the veterans that I work with
Yes.
that they may be Republican when they're alive, but they'll be voting Democrat.
After they die, they'll be voting Democrat, you said. Yeah, I've heard that joke. That's a good one. Let me just, I'm an honest guy, and I don't run from questions. So I just connected to the internet here. Let's just do something. Let's go to, turning my Wi-Fi on and connect to my own hotspot. I should be connecting now. Good. Let's go to Baker County, Oregon. You guys probably have a county website. Baker County, Oregon. Baker County, Baker official website. Says you have, what does it say, population in here? I don't see populations. Okay. Oh, facts and history. Population, 16,082. So it says your total population is 16,082. 16,082. 82. Okay, I'm just writing that down. Okay, so that's what your county says your population is. Now, how many do they talk about demographics here? Sometimes they'll say, what percentage of your people are 18 and older? Sometimes they don't. This is like a history of Baker. Okay, that's a long history. Okay, I don't see that off the top of my head, but what I can do is I can go over here to resident population of Baker County, Oregon, quick facts. It says 18.6% of your people, 18.6% are 18, under 18. So if I do a little math, and I'll just do it so everybody can watch, zoom it in. Your percentage is 18.6, and if I say this is equal to 1 minus that, this would be, that's 81% of your total population should be your 18 and older population, yes? And so if I say this equals this number times what I just looked up, 16,082, you should have 13,090. My graph should say 13,090 for 18 and older populations, right? Do you all see how I did that? Okay, this is a quick way to do it, but still, it's going to be pretty close. Don't save. Let's bring my graph back up. See how I did. Let's bring that up. All right. I'm going to zoom in so you can really see here. And I can go get my raw numbers for the graph too, but this ought to be pretty close. So this is 14,000 and this is 12,000, these lines. So if I were to interpolate here, this right here would be about 13,000, this would be about 13,600. So actually I'm high by about 600. But not, and what did I say? That census correction? I didn't believe it, right? I said, if they hadn't done the census correction, you'd be right in here, and guess what that is? That matches you. So there you go. But it's still, I think I still make the point. But I appreciate you pushing back on me a little bit there. Yeah. Well, I just looked up your county, and your county uses the tax records. So it's probably pretty close. Your county number is probably pretty right, 16,082. There's something about taxes that's one of those facts of life, death and taxes, right? So your county, they spend a lot of time tracking your tax records. Yes, dear.
We just had an election in May, and at that time, what did they say? How many ballots they mailed out? It was over 16,000.
16,000?
Yes. That was a
Did you say 13 or 16?
16.
Wait a minute. How could you send out 16,000? You don't even have that many people in your rolls. 13,000. Okay, that makes sense because that number is about there. So they sent out 13,000 ballots. They reported 16 and you said 13, so that's okay. But that's okay. We can agree to disagree until we do more research. but that's what I love when the citizens know their own numbers. By the way, how much are you paying for your elections? Do you know? How come you don't know? Are you the government or not? We, the people, are the government. We're supposed to be being the government. So even when I asked Christina today, how much you paying? She doesn't know. Wait a minute. What's going on here, guys? You're just getting done unto, and you don't even know this. So it's time to wake up and engage, isn't it? And let's find out how much money you're wasting, because that'll be part of our argument when we talk to your county commissioners. We're going to say, this is how much money you're wasting every election. Let's save some money. When I was in Shasta County, Northern California, and I gave a presentation about 20 minutes, and I showed them how they were going to save $250,000 in the first year in Shasta County. They have 75,000 voters there. And it was funny, it was ironic because the person who had testified right before me in the county commissioner meeting came to complain that the county had promised to drill a well in this one part of the country, and they hadn't drilled the well yet. And the excuse that the county commissioner made was, well, it's a lot of money, and we haven't found the $250,000 we need to drill that well yet. And so I got up in front of the mic and I said, I just found your $250,000, lady. You're going to get a well next year, because if your commissioners will implement this, you'll have the $250,000 to put the well in. It matters. It's a lot of money. And at the same time you're saving the money, you're also improving the integrity of your election. Why wouldn't you do that? Now, really, if I had my druthers, I'd throw out your machines too. But that's a big step. We don't have to win the World War II in one step. Let's get to Normandy first, and then we'll go to Berlin next. Okay, so let's just get some local control first, and then we can clean up the local control. And if you want, you can still use machines if you want, but you can open them up and look in them, because now they're your machines, because you're not using the state's machines anymore. You can do whatever you want, as long as it's local, as long as it's completely transparent, as long as every citizen has a right to inspect every part of it. I'm totally fine with that. When you go to the bank, I love when I talk to the banker. I deposit, because, you guys make donations, thank you very much, and I'll have a stack of cash, and I go in, and I walk up to the teller, and I count the ballots, count the ballots, yeah. Count the bills out in front of her. And then she counts them back in front of me, and it's under this camera, right? I count it, she counts it, and then she takes the stack, and she goes over and puts it in a little machine, and it goes brrrr. We counted it 3 times. 2 times under a camera, twice by hand. We know how to count. We don't need a machine to do that work for us. And then it's secure, it's documented. Anybody who wants to check, we don't agree with your count. Okay, fine. Bring out the ballots, we'll count them again. In other words, if everything is transparent, everybody can trust it. Right now, no trust, no greatness. We don't trust our elections. And you have good reason to not trust your elections. Joe Biden, yeah. People always say, Dr. Frank, we want to audit our election. And I say, great. How are you going to audit it? And they say, well, what we want to do is we want to do a recount of the ballots. And I would say, don't do that. Unless you have a specific reason to suspect the machines were cheating, you shouldn't recount the ballots. Well, why not? Well, because I use this example. It says it doesn't matter how many times you count the cash in the register. What matters is how many of the bills are counterfeit. You shouldn't be auditing the counts. You should be auditing the voters. Did every ballot you get come from a real voter? Because it doesn't matter if you count the same fraudulent ballot over again. There's a beautiful example in Pennsylvania where they caught a truck driver who was working for the Postal Service. He was a contractor for the Postal Service. He drove 200,000 ballots from New York into Pennsylvania. They caught him, and that was in the newspaper articles and everything. You can count those 200,000 ballots any way you want. It doesn't matter whether you use machines or by hand. They're fraudulent ballots coming from AWeB. And we found about 600,000 fraudulent ballots in Pennsylvania, and I think that was 200 of them that were potentially going to be in the election. So it's legit. It's really happening to us. Don't tolerate it anymore. Let's step up. Good questions. Anybody else have a question? Yes. Oh, yes. Hi. I recognize you.
I run a fire department.
You're busy.
Yeah.
She runs a fire department. I said, so she's busy.
On odd years, we have a board member election.
Odd years.
They send us a bill to pay for our part of the election, and I assume it's some formula that they've decided is our percentage of this election cost is our part. Now, is it a valid argument to go before the county commissioners and say, you are costing me as a fire department more money because you are spending money on ballots that are fraudulent or illegal, and so I have a stake in this because you're charged me for the cost of the election.
Isn't that beautiful? She's saying they have to pay the county to run the election for their fire board, but guess what? That number's 30% too high. You're being overcharged.
So is that something that we stand up in line
Yes! She says, is that something we should go to the commissioner meeting and say, I'm going to start only paying 70% of my bill every time until you clean up the voter rolls and use the clean vote of the rolls, because we've run the numbers and about 30% of the people don't belong there. Just go ahead and don't wait for them to say, oh yeah, we'll consider it. We'll put together a committee. Just say, I'm only paying 70%. You guys, it was proven in court, it's illegal, and you're using it. Go for it. You got my backing. I'll buy you lunch. That is such a great argument. I've never heard that anywhere in the country. I love it. Yes, sir.
One other question.
Thank you for that.
When you won the suit against the state,
Yeah.
the 800
Yeah.
come off the roll,
Yeah.
did you get a time frame, or is there a way to enforce it to ensure that there will be 800 coming off the roll statewide, or is it, do you have a breakdown by county, or do they have?
I love this question.
Well, I'll give you the reason for that. I work for the mining, court officer of the Jefferson Mining District.
Thank you.
We won about a suit against the state. We have no way to enforce it.
So when the judge ruled that Tobias Reed had to take 800,000 people out of the rolls, there was no time frame. And he said, we're going to do it, but it's going to be a long, steady process. That's what he said. Now, I can tell you, we have done these laws.
So then how many, if they're going to take the 800 off,
How many did they put on?
they can put more on than we can take off in that time frame. So what did you win?
What we won is that Doug Frank is not a wackadoodle. That we proved what I've been saying is the truth, and that your voter rolls are illegal. That's all I care about that lawsuit, because I've been doing this all over the country. We've got dozens of these lawsuits we've won, and the states never do what they're supposed to do. Los Angeles, we won in Los Angeles. Los Angeles County, they had about 5.2 million people in the voter rolls, and they were required to remove 1.2 million. And within a month, their voter rolls were completely full again with new non-rail voters. And I have the voter rolls. I can show each copy of the voter rolls that they took those names out and they put in new names. So the court didn't say you have to keep clean voter rolls. The court said you have to remove all the ineligible voters. So they did. They removed all the ineligible voters, but the court didn't say you can't add back a bunch of new ineligible voters. So the purpose of the lawsuits, and I've been doing this for 6 years and I've learned some strategy. Lawsuits are not how we're going to win this. Lawsuits are useful tools. We use them to prove that we're not insane. It's been proven in court your voter rolls are illegal. We don't have to use them. We don't have to comply with a non-compliant system. That's the benefit of the lawsuit. Not, is the state going to follow the rules or not? Because we already know they're not going to follow the rules. The DOJ's already sued them and said, given the voter rolls, and Tobias Reed has already said no. And so they're not going to follow the rules. Now, why can the DOJ ask for the rolls? There's a reason. There's something you need to know about that. So in NVRA, National Voter Registration Act, 1993, the states were asked by the federal government to start keeping a central copy of the voter rolls so that they can compare state to state to potentially clean up rolls. And the states said, this is too expensive, we don't want to do it. And the federal government said, no worries, we'll give you money to maintain a central copy. Now, that doesn't mean that it's centrally controlled. It just means that all the counties would report in, and then you would have a central copy you could compare to other states. And that's the way it worked for a long time. And in your state, that's the way it worked until when? 2014, when the state just said, by the way, we're just going to take it all central and control it all central. So why can the Department of Justice say, give us your voter rolls? Because they're giving you money to maintain them in a certain way, and you're not maintaining them in a certain way. So they are policing. It's like if I say, you got to mow my lawn, and I give you the money, but you don't mow my lawn, give me back my money. And so that's what the federal government has the right to demand those, because they've been giving you money to maintain them according to certain standards, and they have a right to do oversight and to make sure that you're following those standards, which you're not. Follow me? So anyway, that's the value of the lawsuit. I don't think that Tobias Reed is ever going to willingly give up your voting by mail system. He loves it, and he goes around telling everybody, oh yeah, we love our vote by mail. Well, I think that's really a bad idea. You need to not be doing that anymore. You need to vote in person, and it needs to be a legal holiday, and I think President Trump's going to declare this year that November 3rd is a legal holiday, and so nobody's going to have an excuse. Let's all show up and have, baseball, hot dogs, and Chevrolet, and have fireworks that night, and let's have a big voting day. What's wrong with that? You guys could do it in one day, and you would all trust your election, and you'd be done. Let's move on. And that's the way we used to do it, and there's no reason we can't do that now. One of my favorite stories is in Colorado. If you imagine Colorado as a rectangle, and the upper right corner is a little county called Phillips County. They have 1,500 voters there. And we were finding fraud in Phillips County because it's the same in every county because it's controlled centrally. And she had tears in her eyes, this sweet lady. She says, oh, Dr. Frank, she says, I've been doing this for 30 years. 30 years ago, we had 1,500 voters. Today, we have 1,500 voters. 30 years ago, it took me a week to get the ballots printed, get them ready. We'd lay them all out. Everybody'd show up on election day. We'd vote. We'd tally them up that night. Next day, I'd fill out the paperwork. Maybe the second day, I'd mail it into the state. And that was it. And everybody loved me. And I moved on to my other tasks. She says, now, months ahead of time, I have to do all this electronic programming on these machines, and I don't know how to do it. We hire somebody. They come in and do all this work. She said, during the election, I have to mail the ballots to mail these ballots to these people at this time. It's such a complicated process. It takes me 6 weeks of work. Election day happens, and I have 3 weeks more of counting and numbers and reporting I have to do. She says, it's a disaster, and nobody trusts me anymore. She says, can't we just go back to the old way? And I said, I'd love for you to go back to the old way. Here's how. And so, but the problem is at the time, I was still only fighting one county at a time. I had to learn, no, we need to have a bunch of counties at a time. But anyway, I rambled a little bit, but I think you get the idea. There's no reason we can't go back to that. You save money, and we restore trust. Anything else? Thanks for asking. Good questions. Yes, sir.
So I invited our county clerk to come.
Stephanie.
Yeah, and she was skeptical. And her biggest thing was she's like, well, where does Dr. Frank get his data? I've never seen him down in my office, and I know my roles really well. And so I was like, I should ask him and have him put on the record, how do I get the data?
So if you apply, you can fill out a form, and you turn it into the Secretary of State, and they will give you a copy of the voter rolls for every county. And we've been doing that now in your state for several years. We have teams that have been downloading the rolls. So these are official rolls right from the Secretary of State. And those are the same rolls she uses, remember, because she doesn't have her own rolls. She logs in the Secretary of State. So the answer to her question is from the Secretary of State. Fair? Did I answer it enough? Now, what will happen is you'll say, Dr. Frank says that there's all this churning going on in your rolls, and all these people are being added and removed. She won't be able to confirm that because all she has is the current copy that's up in the cloud. She's not making snapshots over time and comparing the snapshot month to month. So she's not going to be able to do what I do. But I'd be delighted to sit down with her and show her. Now, how many of you heard of Tina Peters? So I'm the one that did that. I met with her in April of 2021. I was in her office. We were showing her there were all kinds of fraud. She says, what do I do? And I said, let's get backups of all your systems because you're about to have, your machines are all going to be reprogrammed next month, and we don't want to lose the evidence for all the fraud. So we're going to back everything up. Well, she says, I don't know how to do that. So I put her in touch with a licensed penetration tester who had all the equipment he needed to come in and back everything up. He's federally licensed, and I also brought in legal counsel who had worked on other elections with me around the country. So this was like, in fact, it's Kurt Olson was the attorney, and he's now working for the White House in the Justice Department. So I brought in skilled attorney, skilled and licensed penetration tester, and they went in and they backed everything up. When Jenna Griswold, the Secretary of State of Colorado, discovered that we had those backups, she panicked. And they launched an investigation into Tina Peters, and they didn't like it that we had copies of her machines. We have forensic backups of every one of her machines, and we could show all this kind of mischief that was going on in there. And so they made an example out of Tina Peters. They put her in court, they persecuted her, they prosecuted her, and they gave her a 9-year prison sentence. She served 2 years of that, and President Trump pardoned her, and still the Colorado governor wouldn't let her out of prison. So President Trump just started applying pressure, and like he took away all their big building projects, all their federal grants. He just started taking away all their federal monies. And finally, when his own employees at the state office started losing their paychecks, then he said, okay, and he commuted her sentence and let her out. And so they didn't ever pardon her. Trump pardoned her, but they let her out early. And, the reason they did that, I could tell you so many stories. I'll just tell you one so you can understand what I mean. I'm not exaggerating. So this is a kind of a personal thing for her. But she was married, and her husband messed around on her. And he moved out, and he was living with his sweetheart, and that was for about 10 years. And then he came down with Alzheimer's. So his girlfriend dumped him, serves him right. And Tina took him back in to care for him in his decline. But in 2019, he was getting to the point where he needed 24/7 care, and she has a job. And so she put him in a care facility, right, where he could be watched. Then all this stuff happened. And when the state discovered this, the state sent 2 attorneys to the care home where he was being kept, got him to sign over his power of attorney to the state, and they moved him out of state. And he never got a visitor again and died lonely. And Alzheimer's patients need to be constantly interact with somebody and cared for. So basically, if I put this in a crass way, the state tortured her husband to death. A year later, they did the same thing to her father. So they weren't just prosecuting her, they were persecuting her. And the reason was that no other clerk in the country, it's not Bernstein, the attorney, it'll come to me his name, but the prosecuting attorney said, we're prosecuting her so that no other clerk in the country will ever question the integrity of their elections again. So the clerks are afraid to question because they're afraid what the state will do to them. So in our movement that we're doing here, we're not asking the clerks to make a stand. We, the people, are going to our commissioners and saying, our county is not going to do this anymore. We're not going to accept this anymore. This is illegal. And the county commissioners are going to direct the clerk to say, hey, we just cut your budget by 30% because you don't need it anymore. And she's going to go, oh, but I have to do that because that's what the Secretary of State says. No, you're elected by the people, and the people elected us, and we just told you your budget got cut by 30%. If you want to send ballots to all those other people, feel free, but it's not coming out of your pocket, not ours, because we're not going to do that anymore. So in other words, the commissioners have the power, and they will make that decision. Now, the state's not going to just roll over and say, oh, okay, you win. It's going to be a fight. But that's why we want to have 10 counties standing together and a bunch of other Me Too counties supporting. You following me? We're not asking your clerk to stick her neck out. They don't like that. They're scared to do that because of the Tina Peters situation all around the country. I can't tell you how many clerks I've sat with, and we find fraud, and we're in a private meeting. The blood drains from their face, and they'll say, oh, please, Dr. Frank, don't Tina Peter me. They know they've got fraud. They know. And I had one in Missouri. She said, I'm 29 years in this job. I just want to go one more year and retire and get my retirement. Please don't ask me to go public with this fraud. I don't want to do that. They just want to coast. In other words, it's their job. And I had another lady, I have 2 kids. I'm a single mom. I can't risk my job. Don't do this to me. So I've learned, don't push the clerks out in front. The clerks are civil servants. They're your public servants, yes.
So when we go to the commission,
yes.
we say, we want the commission to direct the clerk to run an election where there's hand-counted paper ballots.
Yes.
For people who come in and vote in person.
Sure. That's a big ask. I'm not sure that's my first ask. My first ask when you're talking to the commissioners is, we want you to use a legal copy of the voter rolls. Let's just win one battle at a time. Let's get to Normandy, and then let's get to Berlin after that. Berlin would be single-day voting, people vote in person, show a photo ID, we hand count it at the end of the day. That's Berlin. I'm good for that. Absolutely. I would love if we did that. But that's a big ask in one step. So let's get a win. And when we get that first win, that'll lead to our next wins. At least strategically. That's the way. When you're in a war, and we're in a global war right now, you don't try to win the war in one battle. Let's win a series of battles, and each battle we win gives us more momentum towards the next. The first ask is we want you to use a legal copy of the voter rolls, and the White House is even willing to help it and pay for it. Local to your county. You use your own clean voter rolls. That's a simple ask, and it's why we had Judicial Watch sue the state to prove that your voter rolls are illegal. It's not like you have to prove anything. You could even start that today. The problem is if you just go up there and say, well, this court case says they're illegal, your clerk's going to say, oh, but our rolls are okay here. So you've got to do your work here to show you have the problem. That's why I want 50 of you to say, we looked in our own neighborhood, and guess what? It's in our neighborhood too. It's not just Portland. That's why we need that intermediate step. And when I ran this by Christina today, your county commissioner, when I said that, you could have seen her face light up. She's like, that's what I need. Because your commissioners want to do the right thing too, but they don't necessarily want to stand alone either. But if the community is coming to them saying, this is a problem, you're empowering them. What did I say? Politicians don't start parades, they join them. You start the parade, they join in, other counties join in, see what's going on. Did I answer your question? Let's go for a small step first. There's a funny story. I was reading a book called Blueprint for Revolution by a guy who started revolutions in multiple countries. And he gives the example from San Francisco of Harvey Milk, the mayor there. And Harvey Milk was trying to run on a gay agenda, and he was trying to say, hey, you want to elect me, and we're going to have all these free rights for gays. And he was failing. He's losing every election, over and over again. So one day he was running for office, and he was being interviewed by a journalist, and they were standing in one of the parks in San Francisco, and he steps over and he stalks, and I'm using his words. I'm in church, but I think it's a good word. He says, he steps in dog poop. And he goes, oh, man. He says, I tell you what, he says, if you guys elect me as supervisor, first thing I'm going to do is we're going to clean up the dog crap off the streets, okay? He was elected overwhelmingly, okay? Because it's a small issue that everybody can agree on, and it's a win. And then he was able to accomplish his longer-term agenda. Because once you have a win, then you can have momentum and you can win more things. So that principle is what I'm using here. We don't necessarily have to get everything all in one step. How about if we just take back local control of our voter rolls for starters? Especially since it's been proven in court to be illegal. So you don't have to comply with a non-compliant system. Did you have your hand? There are two hands. Hi.
How can we convince the county clerk that we want to do it in person, et cetera? I know you just said by using clean voter rolls,
Yeah.
but that would give the responsibility to the county clerk to maintain her own rolls, right? Won't the state?
Good question.
Won't the state force her to use their rolls?
So if you read the law says, okay, I'm going to ask the question rhetorically. Who's responsible for clean voter rolls in your state? If you ask the Secretary of State, he will tell you the county clerks. If you ask the county clerks, they will tell you the state. But the answer is, we are. And you know who is supposed to be maintaining the quality of the rolls? The parties. That's why you have precinct captains. There's supposed to be a Republican and a Democrat precinct captain for every precinct, and they're supposed to be maintaining the precinct books for that precinct. That's the way we did it for decades, 100 years. We did it that way. When we went electronic, people forgot that it was actually our responsibility to clean the voter rolls. And now it's kind of all morphed into this electronic system at the state level, and nobody's accountable. That's why we're in the mode we're in. It's us that are responsible. But your clerk will panic. She'll say, oh, oh, I don't know how to do that. This is too much. You guys are overwhelming me. Well, if you don't want to do the work, we'll get somebody who will. You don't want to mow my lawn, it's too big. Okay, I'll get somebody that will. Now, I'm not trying to be mean to your clerk. I'm just trying to say, what's her job? If this is her job, do your job. Your job is to, and by the way, the Secretary of State has said, read your own law, Secretary of State, that you're responsible for the cleanliness of your voter rolls. The state's not responsible for cleaning them. You're responsible for cleaning them. The county clerk is. So by the way, I'm not trying to be mean, because I always give clerks a chance to come along. And a lot of times the clerks realize we're not after them, we're trying to put them back in control. We're not trying to hurt them. They'll kind of lay low and cooperate with us, and that's good, that's what we want. But if we tell her, by the way, did you know legally you're responsible for the cleanliness in our rolls? And she'll go, what, is that true? No, this is the Secretary of State. You bring out the law and you say, right here it is in the Oregon Revised Standard. There it is. Here's the law. You're legally responsible. So now that you know that you're legally responsible, if you use an illegal voter rolls in the next election, we can hold you accountable because you're legal. And she'll say, that's not fair. That's not fair. The state says I have to use their rolls and they're dirty. And we say, we agree. It's not fair. We agree. But guess what? The buck stops here and you're going to be legally accountable and we're going to find the fraud in the election. So you have a choice. You can either cooperate with us and not get sued, or you can use dirty voter rolls and we're going to sue you pro se for your bond, for your security bond for your office, and that's $100,000. And when the insuring company discovers that you broke the law, they're not going to back you, and you're going to be personally responsible for that $100,000. We use that lever all over the country. We got clerks to quit everywhere. And you might say, well, that's not good because now we don't have clerks running our elections. Yeah, but there's somebody who wants that job and somebody who will do the job right. There's people looking for work. Let's give them a job. So I'm not trying to be mean to your clerk. That's way down the road. We use the carrot before we use the stick. But you have the power in ways you don't know you had the power. And the best thing about me is that I'm all over the country and I learn the best ideas from people, and then I'm sharing the best ideas with everybody else. There was an idea today. Who was it? Was it the gal we met with? The county, she's running for office. And she said, Dr. Frank, we have a lot of Airbnbs in our town. Oh, really? What address? Guess what? You just get the public list of all the Airbnbs. Say, just make a reservation. I want to stay in Baker County, Oregon. Where are my choices of Airbnbs? And watch all that list come up. Just start looking up at the rolls. Who's registered at those addresses? They don't live there. There should be no one registered at those addresses. And if there's somebody registered and voting at those addresses, those are illegal at least and probably fraudulent votes. So what a great idea. Now, I've been traveling the country for 6 years, and I've never heard that idea. Your candidate today, what was her name? Yes. What was her name? Say it again. Whitney. She went with us down at the ice cream shop. And you were there. You gave me a card. I think I got your card right here. Yeah, exactly. And so she gave us that idea. What a great idea. And so now, I'm going to go around the country. In fact, I got on the phone right after that meeting, and I called my Alabama team and I said, guess what? I got another idea for you. They were using the child offender list to find felons who weren't allowed to vote. They were using the ICE arrest list to find, non-citizens. Now we don't have to do that because the federal government has offered to help every county take the non-citizens off their rolls. So, but we got all these ideas. That's a great idea. So the best thing about me is I'm collecting all the best ideas. That's why we have the 7 steps. Form a team, we'll connect you to all the other teams, and we'll bring the best wisdom, and you'll succeed way fast. You don't have to learn all this all over again. We've already learned these lessons. Yes, sir.
So this list that the federal government has of non-citizens, can we use that as volunteer citizens to check our own voter rolls?
His question is, if the federal government is offering to give you the list of non-citizens in your rolls, what the federal government is offering to do is to take your county rolls and run the Social Security list against it. They're not saying, here we go, citizens, we're going to give you all this private data. They're not saying that. They're willing to help the local clerk clean their rolls. It would be nice if I had a list of yes. And if she won't take part in it, you can simply ask her, this is not coming at any cost to you. The federal government is offering to take the non-citizens out of your rolls for you, and you're legally required to keep the clean voter rolls, so why won't you do this? And if she won't, then I think you need to bring the heat. Then you get in front of your county commissioners on Tuesday morning, whenever they meet, and you say, we offered this to our clerk and she refuses to do it. She insists upon using an illegal dirty voter rolls. You just expose it. I mean, she's worked for you. When you go to your county leaders, you're not asking permission. They work for you. You're going to them as a community and saying, we elected you to do these jobs and we expect you to do these jobs. And if you're not, we're recalling you or we're replacing you. But you work for us. So you have to kind of change the way you think about things. We're taking back our own government. We're being we the people, finally. You had your hand up.
I did. Are there any efforts from the, I would say the federal government or anybody working on attacking or eliminating ERIC?
ERIC, E-R-I-C, Election Registration Information Center, was started here in Oregon by Soros. And basically the story, the purported purpose of it was, ERIC says, if you give us money, Oregon, we'll take your voter rolls and your driver records and all these other personal records, and we'll put them in a database. And we'll do the same thing in this state. And we'll compare the states, and we'll help you clean your voter rolls. It's sort of the idea of NVRA, the National Voter Registration Act. The whole idea is we want you to keep central rolls so we can clean them. So ERIC was established to do that job for a fee in each state. And it grew and grew and grew until there were about 30 states that were participating in it. However, if you look at the voter rolls for those 32 states, they're the dirtiest in the country. Because ERIC wasn't just saying, hey, here's 100 people we think you ought to take out of the rolls. They were also saying, by the way, here's 100 people that moved into your state that we think you ought to add. And so the state was automatically adding, and the state made a policy of not removing the people that ERIC was recommending, only adding the ones that ERIC was recommending. So in other words, if you go state to state, the dirtiest voter rolls are the ERIC states. Until 2 years ago, when we exposed this, many of the more conservative states says we're out of ERIC. So where I'm from, Ohio, Frank LaRose got up and said, Secretary of State said, we're not going to send this money to ERIC anymore because they aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. Our rolls are getting dirtier because we're using them, not cleaner. And so 12 states got out of ERIC in the last 2 years, and a couple more added in. And it tends to be the blue states that want to be in this ERIC program, and tends to be the red states that want to get out of it. Just in general, not perfectly, but so that's ERIC. So now I've explained to everybody what ERIC is. What was your question again?
Are there any efforts afoot with, just say law enforcement at the federal level to
Investigate ERIC.
To eliminate them,
So are there any efforts by the federal government to get rid of ERIC? No, not that I'm aware of. And if you think about it, it doesn't make sense that the federal government would want to get rid of ERIC. It's the state's decision to buy into that system. Now, the federal government could expose it wasn't working, but I think we've already done that. So it's really the state's choice. It's like, does the state want to buy that guy to mow their lawn or that guy to buy their lawn? It's the states. And a lot of the states that have been getting out of ERIC have been then buying other systems to help them do that job. And they aren't working very well either. So I don't think that there's going to be any federal attempt to get rid of ERIC. I don't think that'll happen. I think it'll just expose how bad it is, and states will want to get out of it. I think that's the best answer I've got for you. Yes, sir.
I think this is related. If I remember right, you were telling us that there is the possibility people can inject stuff into our voter rolls.
Oh, yeah.
Vote, and then ERIC will be an automatic system that pulls them out of the rolls.
Yes.
Right.
And so what you're referring to is what I learned in Pennsylvania. This is a big deal. This is how I first learned about this. And when Pennsylvania asked for the audit, when Doug Mastriano asked for the audit, they set up a committee in the House and the Senate to do the audit. And Montgomery County, a gal there, Kathy Barnett, she called me and said, would you please help us audit our county? And so she gave me the data. I analyzed it. I found a bunch of anomalies. She introduced me to the legislature, and I was officially on the official audit team for the state of Pennsylvania after the 2020. There were 6 of us, and I had subpoena power. So I was able to get all the information I wanted, any information I wanted by subpoena. I had anything I wanted to see. And what I discovered, what he's alluding to, is Montgomery County has about 500,000 voters in it. And right before the 2020 election, 6 weeks beforehand, their voter rolls grew by 50,000 in 1 minute. It grew by 50,000. And then every one of those people voted, because I have the records. And then 6 weeks later, every one of them was removed from the rolls. So right before the election, the rolls inflated, every one of those people voted, and then every one of them was taken out within 6 weeks. So I got all my charts and data and graphs all ready, and I called Russ Diamond on the right there. Russ Diamond, called him, and I got Secretary Bookvar on the phone, and I was ready to go. I said, okay, these people voted. Why are you taking them out of the rolls? I got you now. And she said, because they moved away. The ones that just got added on. And I didn't think of that answer in a million years, that's what the answer was going to be. And I was like caught totally flat-footed and a little flustered. And I was like, okay, well, I'll look into that. Thank you very much. That was the end of the phone call. I was really kind of embarrassed because I didn't even think of that possibility. So then I started looking them up, and she was right. Every one of them. And it was 50,001. It wasn't 50,000. 50,001 people were added in that 1 minute. All of them voted, and all of them were taken out. What we learned is we subpoenaed the records showing who was logging into the state voter rolls and who was adding who. So we could find out who exactly added those 50,000 to the rolls. We found out who that was. And it was actually in 3 injections, but it totaled 50,001. And it turned out to be an NGO, and there were 83 NGOs in Pennsylvania that had that ability. And what they were doing is they were going 10 years or earlier and getting voter rolls and taking everybody who had been taken out of the voter rolls 10 years or earlier, putting them back into the rolls because they're not going to vote because they don't live there anymore. And then they were stuffing ballots for those people. And then the state was doing voter roll maintenance 6 weeks after the election, and they were using the post office records and removing everybody who had moved away 10 years or earlier. And so it was a built-in kind of way to stuff ballots and have the state clean up automatically after you. And that's the first one I learned. And we showed that. We showed that to the committee. And they were, yep, this is real. We're going to look into this, Dr. Frank. We promise. We're going to have a series of public hearings starting the second Thursday in January. We need to decertify the election today because there's all this fraud. We found hundreds of thousands of cases of fraud this way. And it was crazy. So anyway, thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Yes, sir. Yeah, you got a fire to go. You got to put a fire out. That's a good analogy, isn't it? Good question. Did I answer it all right?
Yeah, I got one other thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of a statement, and I should give the background that I have.
Yeah.
So I have worked for an internet provider as a network engineer, which involves some computer security stuff.
So you're a geek too.
Yes. I now work for a company where we certify software to safety certification, the kind of thing that would control your car and it has to work to not drive you into a concrete wall. And so in Team and Peter's thing, they're all freaked out because you have a copy of the data and you also have another lawsuit that's that way. To me, it kind of blows my mind that having a backup of their system exposes their passwords. That is a very known thing in security systems, that should not be possible. It's an example of bad design.
You're correct. In fact, when we backed up our system, it wasn't just all of her passwords. It showed the passwords for all the other counties in Colorado too. And 2 years ago, I think it was, or a year and a half ago, we discovered that the Colorado State Secretary of State website had a page on it that listed about 60 of the county BIOS passwords for their machines. And they were up there for like 6 months, and nobody even knew it was there. And everybody's saying, you put Tina Peters in prison for doing a backup copy, and Jenna Griswold had the BIOS passwords online for 6 months, and anybody could get them. And the BIOS password allows you to call the motherboard remotely with a cell phone, and it'll pick up. And you don't have to have the other passwords. You're right into the motherboard with the BIOS password. You know that. You're a techie guy. So what's interesting about the Tina Peters, to add a nuance to your comment, is she had received a letter from the Secretary of State instructing every clerk to back up their machines. Anyway, so she was instructed to back it up, but only 2 counties did because nobody knew how. The clerks didn't know how to back up their machines. So one other guy, Dallas Schroeder is his name. He was in, what county begins with an O? And he was in another county, and he and she are the only people who had backups. And when the state found out we had the backups, they raided his office, and he surrendered his backups. But Tina didn't have the backups. And they were, because we had them with our penetration testers doing analysis and whatnot. But when they raided her house and they raided her office, Mr. Lindell sent his plane to her and picked her up and brought her to the cyber symposium in August. And that's when she went public. And I was on the stage with her, and she was shaking, and I put my arm around her to stabilize her, because she wasn't planning to go public. She wanted to just fix her elections. And so she didn't want to go. We announced that we had a big revelation at 7 o'clock that night at the Cyber Symposium, and she didn't come on stage till 7:30. She was chickening out. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm not trying to be mean to her. I love her to death. She's awesome. But she was afraid. She didn't get into this to become a national hero. She was trying to run her elections in a healthy, honest way. But she was forced into the public eye. You should have heard the trial against her. That the judge said, you just did all this because you wanted to have fancy plane rides and public accolades and all this stuff. I was with her all that time. She didn't want any of that. She just wanted to repair her elections. That's all she wanted. So anyway, but that's a good comment. Yeah, in fact, Patrick Byrne showed that in every Dominion machine, he didn't show it on your ES&S machines, but he showed it on every Dominion machine, that there was a file you could get to on the computer that was non-encrypted and not password protected that would give you the BIOS passwords to get you in the back end of the election system. All you just needed to know is where that file was. So it's kind of like a backdoor, but it was available if you knew where it was. So you're a techie and you're a security guy. Would you ever design an election system like that? Our election systems are stupid. Why are we using them? It's dumb. They're illegal and stupid. So that's and
Security system, like if you want it secure, you don't hide stuff. You put the code out in the open. You let everybody see it.
Gotcha. And then it's secure.
Yeah.
You know what a hash is, right? He's a security guy. So one of the things that's required by law is you guys have a machine that tabulates, that counts your ballots. And there's software in that. And your Secretary of State is supposed to have the hash for your software in a file. And what the hash is, it's like a code number that if you change the software at all, it will change the hash. So the way you can know that the software is the original software is if it matches, if the 2 hash numbers match. Well, nobody checks it. And they're supposed to check it every election. Did the software change? Well, wait a minute, Windows did an update. Oh, is there a software change also? They're supposed to check the hash every time, and they never do. And guess what? The hash has changed because the voting companies changed their software, which means the machines are supposed to be recertified. Are they being recertified? No. So your whole system is not following the law. No wonder we have all these problems. We could go on like this for hours, couldn't we? Another question by the geek. Yes, sir. And that's okay. I'm a geek too, so I'm in touch with my inner geek. 250,000. 250 million.
Is that just the voter rolls that we can ask from our state? Is that our ability to audit our own voter rolls, or is he talking about more than that?
More than that. A lot more. The Chinese have so much information on all of us, and they also have. When I get a copy of the voter rolls like I showed you, there are many more fields that the state has that they're not giving us. Well, China has all those. My friend Stephen, who drives me around, is fond of reminding everybody that a month before the election in 2020, your DMV was hacked. Where did all those rolls and all those signatures go? Because now they have all the signatures they need for all the ballots. Does that make sense? So it's so easy to cheat. So that's what, I mean, I build electronics for a living. I design and build electronics and integrate systems. That's what I do. I love doing that stuff. I'm a techie guy. But I would never use electronics for an election because I know, because I can hack any of them. And people come up to me, oh, check out my new system, Dr. Frank. I've got this system. It'll be really secure. It can't be hacked. And 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I've already figured out how to hack them. That's not... Electronics are great, but they're horrible for elections. Let's just go back to hand counting. Super easy. Everybody trusts it. You're done. If you don't believe it, count it again. And have a chain of custody. Vote in person. But I know that's a lot to ask Oregonians to make that step all at once. So we'll probably have to keep your mail-in system, probably. Did you notice Trump asked 2 days ago, he asked the Supreme Court to pass a law making it illegal, or to interpret the law that states can't use mail-in voting. He went to the Supreme Court for that. So he's working at it, but it's not going to work because the Constitution says that the states determine the manner of the voting. So the Constitution that's not a constitutional request. That's why the solution's bottom up, not top down. You guys have to fix it from the bottom up. Boy, we could go on for hours like this. Are we done? Or do you have more questions? It sure has been good to be with you. And I had a great day here. I really enjoy your commissioner. And I guess you have an election coming up. 2 people are going to be competing for an open slot. Cody and Chris, what was her name? Whitney. Whitney and Cody, yes. You're Cody's other half. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. And he's here in spirit. And so that is a very important decision for you guys because this is all going to be coming to a head right at that election, and that's the one that's going to determine. So Whitney and Cody, you guys need to talk to them and say, hey, Whitney and Cody, if you were commissioner, how would you handle this? That's an election question. And by the way, if you're not willing to back us up and back up our election security, maybe we don't want you to be our commissioner. So that puts a little heat on Cody, right? He's got to step up and say, okay, if I'm elected, I'm going to be in. Christina, she was saying I needed to talk to Cody. And so I'm glad you're here. Talk to my scheduler, Teresa, because I don't even know. I just go where I'm told. And then I knew I was talking in Baker, so I got all my Baker slides ready. But I don't know what I'm doing. Talk to Teresa; she'll set me up. But I would love to talk to him, and nothing against him. I like his opponent. She's a nice lady, and she won like 40% of the votes, and he only got like 20%. But my understanding, there's a split, and probably of those. So it's going to be interesting how that all plays out, huh? Well, this is America at its finest. Let's have a debate and let's discuss and then let the people decide. Yes, I like that, but I want it to be a free and fair election. Yeah, nice to meet you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for singing with me too. That was fun. Uh-huh.
So I do, Baker County is the only county that has mineral for the zoning.
Gotcha. Yeah.
On the way over here.